Tonight would not be possible without their help. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Rob. On behalf of El Pomar Foundation, we thank you for joining us this evening. El Pomar, since 2002, has had the Forum for Civic Advancement, which has sought to engage and support those who are interested in the civic health of the Pikes Peak region. This event reflects that. We're thankful to the partners who actually made this evening happen and will make it happen. Our friends at the Gazette, represented here by Dan Stever, publisher, and our friends at KOAA 5, represented by Evan Pappas, the president of KOAA 5. Please join me in thanking them. Finally, we all have to be truly grateful to the candidates who are joining us this evening, because it is these candidates who are sacrificing so much and putting their lives on hold that are allowing us to have the democracy that we so enjoy. So please join me in thanking them. With that, let me hand it back to this evening's moderator, Rob Quirk. Rob?
Kyle, thank you. And again, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome all of our viewers tuning in on News 5 Now, Channel 5.2, that's over the air and on cable. We got a great opportunity, a lot of eyeballs on this tonight. Also, all of you checking in online at KOAA.com, thegazette.com, and thestatedebate.com. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you who have been sending in questions for the last several weeks. Without your help, all of you checking in online at KOAA.com, thegazette.com, and thestatedebate.com. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you who have been sending in questions for the last several weeks. Without your help, this would not be possible as well, and we've tried to cull them down to the most important issues we believe that are facing Coloradans this election cycle and get some straight answers from our candidates here this evening. Great opportunity again to hear directly from the candidates, so let's meet them. First of all, in the race for Attorney General, directly to my left, Republican George Brockler, District Attorney. His Democratic challenger and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Phil Weiser. Phil, welcome. Next to them and running for your state treasurer position this year, Republican candidate and businessman Brian Watson. Brian, welcome. And he is running against Democrat and State Representative Dave Young. Dave, welcome. Finally, in the race for Secretary of State, a familiar face here in El Paso County, Republican incumbent Wayne Williams. Wayne, welcome. And his Democratic challenger, Attorney Jenna Griswold. Jenna, welcome to El Paso County as well. I'd also like to introduce our panelists who, along with myself, we will all be asking questions of the candidates. My co-anchor at News 5, Elizabeth Watts. And again, our very important partnership with the Gazette this time around, along with the El Pomar Foundation and their political reporter. You know him, you love him, Joey Bunch, right there. And just to give you an idea of how this process is going to work, over the next 90 minutes we'll be alternating among the candidates. So basically, we'll be asking questions of the Attorney General candidates, then the State Treasurer candidates, then the Secretary of State candidates, and just keep rotating through. Some of the questions will be specific to those individuals. Others will be general questions about the position itself as we move forward. They will each have a minute and a half to answer. But again, we do have a little flexibility. I will have some discretion here. If we need to have something clarified or a follow-up question, we will have that opportunity to ask the candidates to clarify, or if we feel that a question has not been answered, follow up. Again, I want to let everyone on the panel know our timekeeper right there in front. Can everybody see him okay? He will be giving you 30-second cues, correct? And then 10-second cues. And then stop. And we all know what that means, don't we? All right, so there are no opening statements, so we're going to get right to the questions. How about that? Huh? All right. And we are going to start with Joey Bunch from the Gazette. Joey?
Well, first I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Ms. Griswold, gentlemen, we hope this is a lot of fun for you, but not too much fun. So let's dive right in. Mr. Weiser, Mr. Brockler, both of you bring different experiences to this race. You know, Mr. Weiser in academia and regulatory, Mr. Brockler in the courtroom. Which is more important to the job of Attorney General?
Let's begin with Mr. Weiser, please. You have 1 minute and a half.
First, let's give it up for Kyle Hibble, 8 years distinguished service in the Seaboard of Regents. What we need from an Attorney General is broad-based experience. This job has a fairly modest, about 10% of it is criminal prosecution. The rest is a range of other legal issues. Spearheading consumer protection cases, something I've done at the U.S. Department of Justice under 2 presidents. Regulatory matters, you mentioned, Joey, a lot of these issues, healthcare, oil and gas, water, they're regulatory matters. You need to understand how to develop regulations, how to defend them in court, and then a lot of advising on a range of issues like sports gambling or how we manage with different amendments that might be passed. This is the lawyer for the people on every issue relevant to the people of Colorado, from civil rights to consumer protection to protecting our land, air, and water. I've got a range of experience, legal expertise. I also have the leadership experience. As the head of CU Law School, we turn things around. You can talk to Kyle about that. Not an easy time for legal education. We got applications up, we got employment up, we got debt down. That's the innovative leadership I'll bring to be your Attorney General. And finally, this is about priorities. There's a lot of discretion the Attorney General has to act on behalf of the people of Colorado. Do you sue pharmaceutical companies for lying to people? Do you defend the Affordable Care Act? Also, we need the right values. I bring that legal expertise. I bring that leadership experience. I bring the right values.
Mr. Weiser, thank you. And let's now move on to Mr. Brockler again. What's more valuable for an Attorney General, the courtroom, the administrative, regulatory experience? You have 1.5 minutes, sir.
Listen, the state of Colorado is about to hire a lawyer to represent it. It's the top lawyer for all of state government except for the legislature. And anytime you're going to hire a lawyer, you should demand to know what experience that person has acting as a lawyer, especially in the state of Colorado with Colorado's laws. Now, I think it's too myopic to suggest that I've only had prosecution experience or courtroom experience, and there's no doubt I have buckets of that. But I've also been a criminal defense lawyer. I've beaten my own office in trial. How awesome is that? I don't even think John Suthers can say that. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. I have been a civil plaintiff's lawyer. I have been a civil defense lawyer. I have represented victims of crime. I have represented people who are wronged by companies and individuals. I have been a chief of military justice, not just here at Fort Carson, but deployed where decisions were far more difficult in Tikrit, Iraq. I've been a regional defense counsel. I've handled cases at every single level of government, municipal, state, federal, and military. But it's not just me saying that having considerable litigation experience is important. If you go to the Attorney General's website right this minute from your phones, and you can do this, if you look up any of the posted Assistant Attorney General positions, they all require significant courtroom experience and litigation experience. And you're talking to an Army colonel who has led a team of 90 prosecutors for 6 years. I'll do this job for us.
Mr. Brockler, thank you. We're going to move on to the state treasurer race. Elizabeth, we're going to start with you. I know we had a specific order here, but if you would direct your question to Mr. Young first. Elizabeth, go ahead.
All right. This is actually for both of you, if that's all right, Mr. Young and Mr. Watson. What plan do you have to identify and appropriately collect? I'm so sorry. I'm nervous. This is my first debate. Okay. Sorry about that.
It does that to
and
women.
he's very intimidating. Okay. What plan do you have to identify and appropriately collect online and retail sales taxes from Colorado businesses? Why is this important? Isn't it a nice tax break for consumers who shop online?
Mr. Young, go ahead. You have 1.5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for the question, Elizabeth. Actually, this is an issue that has come through the court system. The Wayfair decision, I think, is what you're talking about at this point. And it really falls not in the Treasurer's office as much as it does in the Department of Revenue. I do think that the issue that we have seen play out is the fact that when there are not taxes collected in the state of Colorado for those that are shopping online, it does present an unfair advantage to those local businesses that in fact are required to do that. So I do believe that it's important that we solve this problem. The courts have spoken. It is going to be within the purvey of the Department of Revenue to actually carry this out, and I think work is going on right now. We have interim committees in the legislature that are working on it.
Thank you.
So I want to thank the Alpamar Foundation for hosting us, and I want to thank every single person who showed up tonight. It means the world to us as candidates. Absolutely, this is not an issue for the State Treasurer's Office, but one of the things the State Treasurer does get to do is speak about financial matters on behalf of the people of Colorado. And so I'm a big believer that government should only do what the people cannot do for themselves, and we need to ask some very discerning questions of what should be on that list. As it relates to sales taxes specifically, I think government does need to look at this idea of creating a more level playing field for competition, because it is unfair if you are spending money on bricks and mortar in a local community trying to create jobs and opportunity and paying your proportionate share of taxes, and somebody who's shopping online is not. And so we have to remember that this has to be about people first, and we have to make sure that it has an even level playing field for competition to thrive and to grow.
I want to move to the Secretary of State's race, and one of the questions that comes up, and it's obviously at the end of the day, the ballot initiatives Y and Z are going to be decided by voters, and essentially what Colorado voters are going to decide upon is to basically incorporate unaffiliated voters along with Democrats and Republicans with the establishment of a commission to redraw these lines every 10 years. But as the Secretary of State, and first, Jenna, I'm going to direct this question to you. What are your impressions as to where this state needs to go in terms of redrawing these lines, and more importantly, the incorporation of parties not normally associated with redistricting?
Well, thank you for having us here. It's such an honor to be here, and that's a great question. I support Y and Z, and what that does is take redistricting and drawing our local maps out of the hands of politicians. No one wants politicians to draw their own maps, and it puts it in the hands of a commission that's representative of our state, for Democrats, for Republicans, and for unaffiliateds. And how we choose those people, it's a really complicated way, but it makes sure it's really fair. And I support these measures because, number one, it will make sure that racial gerrymandering is prohibited in the state of Colorado. I think that's important. And it makes sure that we have geographical representation when we're drawing those maps, that we have different people's voices heard. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. I do believe that how redistricting has historically worked in Colorado hasn't quite worked quite right, because it's had to be kicked up to the judiciary to draw the maps. So I fully support that, and I hope those measures move forward, because at the end of the day, we live in a democracy. And just like voting, just like petitioning, when we draw the maps, we want to make sure that every eligible person, whether you're Republican, whether you're independent or a Democrat, has their voices heard, both in voting, both in petitioning, and then how we elect our elected leaders.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, same question to you. Just give us your perspective on the questions before voters, and if they do in fact pass, where do you come down as far as that is concerned?
Thank you very much for the question. The current system is broken. The legislature has failed to act with respect to congressional districts for the last several cycles. I was one of the plaintiffs saying, you have to redraw the districts. You have to make them equal in population. With respect to the legislative districts, I'll give you an example. If you go east of here, you'll be in Calhoun, Colorado. If you then go up to Denver and drive up I-70, you'll be in Georgetown. That's the same Senate district. That illustrates how poorly the districts are drawn under the current system. I support Y&Z. I met with the proponents very early on in the process. Former Secretary of State Bernie Busher was in my office talking to me about those issues. We provided input. We supported them through the legislature. They will make a much better system than the current one. The Secretary of State's office needs to be able to provide firsthand knowledge of how elections work and helping them draw districts that follow existing lines where practicable, so that you don't have a single house left in one district for one office and another district for another, which takes away that voter anonymity. And so having gone through that process, having been a plaintiff, we're going to be providing input to them so that they, as citizens, can make the best decisions for Colorado. I strongly support Y&Z. It's supported by a bipartisan group of people across the political spectrum, so please support those.
I do want to follow up real quick with both candidates on this. One of the opponents, or those who are opposing both of these measures, basically are saying, okay, we're including unaffiliated voters, but what about the other political parties in Colorado that aren't going to have a representative voice? Jenna, first, let's turn to you. Speak to that issue, and it seems like that's a fair question, that even though it's expanded to unaffiliated voters, there's still going to be some political parties that are going to be left out of the process. And you have 1 minute, by the way.
Okay, thank you. So I do think it's really important that everybody's voice is heard. I do think this Y&Z is a great step in the right direction. Not only are we making sure that there's not racial gerrymandering, that may be rolled back under U.S. constitutional law. We're making sure that the system is transparent, that lobbyists aren't drawing the maps. But more importantly, right to your question, is that the public has input in real time. No decisions are made behind closed doors. And the way that these amendments would work, if they're passed, is there's rules that the commission would have to comply with. So other political parties, I definitely hear their concerns, and I would encourage folks, whether you're Green Party, Constitutional Party, be part of the system. You can give maps, suggest maps, make sure that the maps are drawn fairly, and at the end of the day, if the system isn't working, it will go back to the judiciary.
Hey, and Wayne, the thing is, a lot of people who are complaining about how the election process is working these days is exclusion rather than inclusion. And obviously the opponents are saying, wait a minute, sure, we're moving it forward, but not far enough. Your reaction, you have 1 minute, Wayne.
I don't think any ballot issue is likely to be perfect. But what I do know is the current system essentially provides for one party having complete control. The new system allows unaffiliates to play a key role in the decision-making factor. They are the largest group of voters in the state of Colorado, so including them is, I think, important. I think the new system does provide that opportunity for input. In past years, sometimes maps have been adopted without any prior notice, without anyone knowing what was going to be done. And the new system provides for a public input and public notice and the opportunity to comment on those maps, which is absolutely critical. No matter how wise any 12 people are going to be, they don't know every community, they don't know every community of interest, and so you have to have that opportunity to provide and receive input.
All right, thank you. We're going to bring it back to the Attorney General candidates. Joey, I'm going to have you, Elizabeth, I'm going to have you ask the question here, if you could. And again, if you would, direct the question first to Mr. Brockler.
All right, Mr. Brockler, what actions by the federal government would fall into your definition of overreach? Abortion, environmental laws, etc.
You have 1.5 minutes, sir.
First off, I think the Attorney General plays a pretty pivotal role in protecting Colorado's sovereignty and our ability to govern ourselves. I've got 2 good examples for you. Under the last administration, through an EPA rule concocted by bureaucrats 1,500 miles from here, something called Waters of the United States was sought to be imposed on top of Colorado, which would have hijacked about 93% of the jurisdiction over our precious water, maybe our most precious resource. It was incumbent upon the Attorney General's office to push back on that and seek to retain control over those waters through a simple definitional change that the EPA wanted to force on us through a law they couldn't get passed by Congress because it was too radical. But under this administration, I tell you too, I was not a fan of Amendment 64. I didn't support it, but 55% of us put it in the Constitution. And as a prosecutor for 1 million Coloradans, I shifted to the idea of defending and supporting the spirit of that law while protecting us from all the ills that flow from it, and that includes our burgeoning black market marijuana grows. But despite our local attempts to regulate recreational marijuana, we have heard more and more about a federal government that may want to come in over the top of us and impose its will on us on this issue in which we have decided how to govern ourselves. And as Attorney General, I will push back on that too. I care not which party has the White House. I care not who's there. I'm not here to protect anyone's legacy. I'm here to protect the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weiser, if you'd like to speak directly to Amendment 64 and the overreach of the DOJ that some argue, or other areas, where do you feel that your office, you individually, must push back?
I have a simple test. Is the federal government doing something that's illegal, and does that action hurt Colorado? Unfortunately, right now, there are several examples. This is a point of disagreement between the two of us. One that I've heard about again and again is the Affordable Care Act, which protects people with pre-existing conditions. And I've talked to people who this protection, it's a matter of life and death for their kids. It's what's protecting them from bankruptcy. This is unthinkable to me. A law passed by Congress, upheld by the Supreme Court, not being defended and enforced by the Federal Department of Justice. We have a choice here in Colorado. We can have an Attorney General who protects us, who stands up for people with pre-existing conditions. That's number one. Number two, on the census, it is the case that the Constitution, I clerked at the Supreme Court for Justice White and Justice Ginsburg, both of whom said, carry a copy with you. You never know when you need it. Here's what the constitutional clause says. We need to do an actual enumeration of the whole population, including everyone. But right now our federal government is trying to ask the question for political purposes, whether about your immigration status, to intimidate people not to be counted. That'll hurt Colorado. It'll hurt our money that we get from the federal government. It'll hurt our representation. I'll stand up for Colorado. And finally, on key protections of our land, air, and water that are being taken down without adequate justification, I'll stand up for our land, air, and water to protect Colorado.
Just want to follow up real quick with let's try to keep the applause down. You're taking time away from your candidates. Just throwing that out there. We say that every debate, so there you go. All right. Just putting it out there. Do want to follow up, though, because a lot of people look at, well-intentioned prosecutors to push back against the Department of Justice. That costs Colorado taxpayers money. Where do you draw the line? Both gentlemen, I want to get your reaction to that about budgeting to push back against the federal government. Would that money be better served in other areas? Mr. Weiser, I'll start with you. You have a minute. Talk to that expense. And this litigation could go on forever.
It doesn't go on forever. Decisions happen, and the decisions that are happening in many of these cases is to declare action by the federal government illegal. Often, Colorado is participating with other states who share the concern, meaning we're not spending a lot of our attorney time doing it. It takes a little bit, for sure, but the stakes are critical. It's health care. It's protecting our land, air, and water, fair and legal treatment of immigrants. That's what's at stake. And we have a check on the federal government if it acts illegally and hurts us. It's our Attorney General. This is the lawyer to protect the people of Colorado. An Attorney General is not doing his or her job if we're not defending the rule of law when people's lives are at stake. So yes, it might cost a little bit of money, but it's worth it. And I will always, in every single case, ask these two questions. Is the federal government doing something that's illegal? I'm not interested in tilting at windmills. I'm interested in cases that we can win, and that when we win, we've made life better for the people of Colorado.
Mr. Brockler, same question, sir. Again, how do you prioritize pushing back and spending taxpayers' money to litigate some of these overreach cases?
Listen, I trust us in this room a lot more to govern ourselves on issues of importance than I do bureaucrats 1,500 miles from here, and yet more and more we find a federal government, regardless of who's in charge of the White House, seeking to dictate to us how to live our lives. Now, this choice here, and to answer your question, really comes down to, are we going to have an attorney general or are we going to have an activist? Now, an activist finds the federal law they like and says, I will fight and defend this one. And we can call it the Affordable Care Act. But an activist also says, well, I don't like the federal immigration law, so I will carve out part of the office to figure out a way to push back against the federal immigration law. I am not here to defend any federal law. I'm here to defend the state of Colorado. But let me say this. That Obamacare, I wasn't a supporter of it, but it was congressionally passed, presidentially signed, and Supreme Court approved. And I think it's incumbent upon the U.S. Attorney General to have to defend that law whether we like it or not.
Thank you. Move to our treasurer candidates. Joey Bunch, you have the question for our candidates, sir.
I do. As the state's banker, what's your position on Amendment 74, which would require local and state governments to compensate people if their property has lost value because of regulation? What's your position?
We're going to start with Mr. Watson. You have a minute and a half, sir.
Yeah. So I'm against Amendment 74, mainly because it puts a very large tax burden on the people of Colorado. You know, we're all paying a whole lot more money right now for a lot of things. Life's gotten a lot more expensive. And before we give more money to our government, I think we need to make sure that the government is a good steward of what we've entrusted them with. You know, I came from very humble means on the western slope of Colorado. I started my company 18 years ago. And as an entrepreneur, I have to figure out every day how to become better, smarter, and faster. But our government is not doing that. And so because I believe in stewardship, one of my campaign pledges is not to take a salary from the government when elected. And I'm doing that because I want to do my part to try to reduce the cost and burden of government. I'm a big believer in education and creating great educational environments. So I like the premise of some of these amendments and things that are being done. But before we spend more money, let's make sure that government is being efficient. Let's make sure that it's truly representing the people. You know, one of the first things I'm going to do when elected state treasurer of Colorado is to go in the office and ask the people a very simple question. Who is our customer? Because some people believe it's lobbyists and other politicians and things like that. For me, in the office that I will run and commit to you, you are the customer, and the people of Colorado should be served every single day.
Thank you. Mr. Young, again, you heard the question from Joey. You have a minute and a half, sir.
Well, thank you. I am also against Amendment 74 for similar reasons. I believe it's going to present a very serious burden on taxpayers across the state. But I come at it from a different point of view. I've been a member of the Joint Budget Committee for the past 4 years. I've been a representative for the Greeley area for the past 7. And I've had a deep experience and deep understanding of the complexities of the state of Colorado and its finances. And this experience has actually informed me that we have a financial crisis in the state of Colorado that we need to sort out. We have a crisis in the state of Colorado when it comes to K-12 education funding. We've cost shifted our finance problem on higher education to the backs of students and their families on higher tuition and force them to take loans out. So this kind of an amendment, in fact, creates problems for people across the state, and it really puts a burden on them when we already have a pretty significant burden facing them funding these funding crises that we have. I'm ready to start day one because of my experiences as a legislator and particularly on the Joint Budget Committee. I am ready to begin working on the problems that face us as a state and work with leaders and others across the state and our taxpayers to ensure that we're actually moving our state forward and investing right here in Colorado so that we can move our state along.
I want to do a quick follow-up for both of you, just 30 seconds really. What tweaks, if any, as it exists now in terms of the ability to sue when these types of circumstances occur, would you favor? Do we need to move forward in some different way? Mr. Watson, I'll start with you. Not perhaps as far, obviously you believe that 74 goes too far, but is there some tweaking to that ability for people to find recourse legally in these circumstances?
Well, that may be a question better for the Attorney General candidates, but I'm not an attorney. I'm a business person and a private sector person who wants to serve in government. But I always believe that we should empower the people to bring forth their cases as they see fit. And so if that's allowed, so be it. But again, a lot of these issues, they do resolve in our state legislature, and we need to make sure we have the spine to address these issues. These are not issues that are just going to go away by ignoring them or kicking the can down the road. I really want to see great leadership, again, representing the people of Colorado.
Mr. Young?
Well, thank you. I actually had an experience of working in this area in the 2 sessions ago. I carried a bill on forced pooling that was designed to actually give our property rights owners more power to understand the process of takings that they might be involved in. And so what we wanted to do is increase notification, increase the number of people required in a forced pooling situation to actually have their rights upheld, and actually make the language plain when they receive the documentation to ensure that they really understand what's happening. That bill didn't pass that session, but I actually come from Weld County, and it turns out that the 5 Republican county commissioners were in favor of it, as well as CCI and commissioners across the state. So I was proud to carry that, and a very similar bill actually passed the next session. So I think it is a legislative solution that can be found, and I've been in the middle of working on it.
Joey, go ahead.
A quick answer. I'm not good with money or math, and I don't have to count very high for either one of them. But help me understand this. What's the impact of 74? You know, what's the worst case scenario, and how do we pay for it? Where does the money come from?
Let's start with Mr. Watson. You have a minute.
It's a basically doubling of your taxes, and it would add on $1.6 billion of additional tax revenue. So again, I think we're all paying a whole lot already, and we're just trying to make ends meet. If anyone has been a part of our campaign, I talk a lot about dining room table economics, right? We're all sitting down at the dining room table trying to just make ends meet. And Colorado's gotten a whole lot more expensive. And so again, before we start doubling taxes, before we start going to the taxpayer, let's make sure government is being a good steward of what we've entrusted them with. And then as they are a better steward with that, then we can talk about tax increases from there. But that shouldn't be the first well that the government always goes to, is the people just asking you to continue to write checks on their empty promises.
Thank you. Dave, go ahead.
Well, I'm a little confused. I'm wondering, are you referring to Amendment 74? Okay, Amendment 74 is different than I think what my opponent was referring to in Amendment 73. As I mentioned, I have deep experience in the state's finances and the budget, and your question is, where does the money come from? We don't have the ability to raise taxes as a legislature. That is only done by the vote of the people under Tabor. And in fact, there is a conflict in our Constitution with Gallagher
Well,
Amendment.
I think, excuse me just a second, I think, Joey, the point he's making is if this passes, what's the downside? Yeah, I mean, I think that more so the process, just, it's more about what's the result of this if it does happen. Am I correct in that, Joey?
That's correct.
Well, thank you for clarifying. And in fact, I think in my earlier comments, I mentioned that we have a deep hole in every aspect of the budget. So if we have to go in and find more money in the current budget in order to figure out how to pay this bill, I will tell you right now, it's going to create chaos in the state of Colorado as far as K-12 education is concerned, our transportation system, healthcare, higher education. Every aspect of the budget would be very dramatically impacted in a very negative way.
Thank you. Moving on to our Secretary of State candidates, and this is a general question. We are going to begin with Mr. Williams, and the question is, in the Trump era, confidence in voter registration and voting has taken a beating from every political quarter. Are those concerns fair, do you believe? What's your plan to counter it? What have you done as Secretary of State to address those concerns? You have a minute and a half.
Thank you very much. I think there are concerns. There was a recent NPR Marist poll that said 32% of the people believe that a foreign nation will change election results in the United States in 2018. I have taken this head on. As the Secretary of State for Colorado, I adopted new election standards that require a voter verifiable paper ballot with respect to every vote that's cast. I then added the nation's first full risk limiting audit, where we compare the way the paper ballot was cast with the actual cast vote record from the voting machine, the tabulation machine. So that's why we can tell you in Colorado that nobody in Moscow and nobody in Beijing and nobody anywhere else in the world changed a single vote in the state of Colorado. I think conveying to people the importance of the security precautions we've done has helped us significantly address this issue. Colorado has the highest percentage of registered voters in America. We have the highest percentage of people voting because of the confidence in our system and the ease that we've made it to vote. And I'm proud of that record and happy to address those issues. As a Secretary of State, in fact, I was just speaking in Washington, D.C. with the Bipartisan Policy Center with the Democratic Secretary of State for New Mexico, talking about the things we are doing to ensure the preparation for the 2018 election.
Thank you. Ms. Griswold, again, the question is, confidence in voter registration, and are those concerns fair? What's your plan, and as you see Mr. Williams operate that office, what concerns do you have moving forward?
Well, I think the concerns are fair, and I think President Trump stokes them himself. He said that millions of people voted illegally without a shred of proof. I think Wayne agrees that there wasn't 5 million illegal votes casted in 2016. And I think it's really important that the Secretary of State makes prudent decisions when interacting under that type of leadership from the federal level. And I announced my candidacy right when my opponent sent our voter data to the Trump administration, Trump's voter commission. It was being ran by someone with a long and ugly history of disenfranchising hundreds of thousands of people. It was sued for federal overreach, and there was no guarantee that our voter data would be stored in a secure server. So I think the leadership has to come from the Secretary of State. I won't play for President Trump when he wants to create havoc and chill the democratic process in Colorado. I will stand up for the people of Colorado. I have no problem filing an injunction and saying, hey, this is federal overreach. There's all these lawsuits. Let's let the judiciary figure out what's going on. Along those lines, our election systems have to work in Colorado. And we have a statewide voter registration system that has to work in real time on election day. The problem is it generally does not. It has gone down in Colorado, 2010, 2014, 2016, and when it goes down, it causes 2 to 3 hour lines in some voting locations. Now, that's not because of Russian cyber attack or anything like that, but when people go to vote, the systems have to work so that voter confidence remains strong.
Okay, I'm going to have Mr. Williams, you'd like to respond to those are some hard accusations about how this process works. We all watch it. We know there are problems on election day. Again, your reaction to what you just heard. You have 1 minute, sir.
Sure. Let me address both of the issues. First, with respect to publicly available voter data files. These are files that anyone in the state or nation can get. It is a simple request. We have 3 days as a general rule under the Colorado Open Records Law to comply with the request. I think you want a Secretary of State that complies with the law. And that's true whether you like who's requesting the data or particularly if you don't like, because that's really where the push comes in the respect of this office. Do you respect everyone's opportunity to obtain the same data whether you like them or not? And that's what my office did. No private information was given, only publicly available. We have fixed the issues that occurred. Several of those were before my time as Secretary of State. The last 2 elections have worked flawlessly, and that is, I think, what you have to do as a Secretary of State is address the issues as they come up, be prepared for others. The fact that we adopted all of these security standards before other people thought they mattered illustrates the type of preparation we're making.
Thank you. Back to our Attorney General candidates, and Elizabeth, your question for our candidates.
Would you pursue a lawsuit against the federal government to prevent the separation of immigrant families?
And yes, Mr. Weiser, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds, sir.
My test is simple. Is the federal government acting illegally? Does it hurt Colorado? We in Colorado care about immigrants, want them treated fairly, and we believe in asylum for appropriate cases. A lot of asylum seekers come to Aurora, one of the most diverse and welcoming cities in the U.S. But right now, some of those asylum seekers are not able to come, and they're not given due process of law, which is what the Constitution requires we afford everyone, including persons seeking asylum. That violation of the law and that harm to Colorado and our interest in welcoming refugees the way my family was welcomed, because my grandparents and my mom survived the Holocaust and came to this nation as refugees and were welcomed and were given due process of law. When a federal government is willing to act illegally, we don't just say, oh, it's awful that Jeff Sessions is separating families at the border or not enforcing the Affordable Care Act. We turn to our lawyer, the lawyer for the people, who has the authority to do something about it. And I would do something about it, because we in Colorado believe in the rule of law. We believe in treating people fairly, both those seeking asylum and those who have pre-existing conditions. This race is about whether the lawyer will do something about it. I will as your Attorney General.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Brockler, again, the question, would you pursue a lawsuit against the federal government to prevent the separation of immigrant families?
Yeah, my test is the only test for an attorney, especially one that represents the state, and that is, do you have standing to file a lawsuit? Is there a colorable claim on behalf of the state of Colorado? Are you out there as an ideological Don Quixote tilting at every partisan windmill that's out there? Look, the bottom line is this. If there are families being separated in Colorado, that might be something we want to take a look at, and that's coming from a kid who is the son of a first-generation American. It makes my stomach hurt to think about a government that separates children from their parents. I've got one of mine right here. It would make me crazy to see the government separate them. But to suggest that our Attorney General's office will be converted into some other lawsuit machine to take on administration with which we disagree over every issue, whether it occurs within the borders of the state or not, that's not an Attorney General. That's an activist. And I intend to be an Attorney General.
Mr. Weiser. I believe he just referred to you as an activist and a lawsuit machine, or at least pursue that. You have a minute,
I've
sir,
been
to
referred
respond
to
to
as
Mr.
an
Brockler.
iced tea drinking machine before, but not a lawsuit machine. Let's talk about the law. George has made a legal statement. Does Colorado have standing to bring the lawsuit? That case is litigated right now on behalf of other states who have joined this litigation, like Washington. The answer, they have standing. If you're a state who wants to welcome asylum seekers, you have an interest in the asylum process working as the law requires. We in Colorado welcome asylum seekers and have a vested interest. I'm actively committed to fighting for the people of Colorado. And when the federal government hurts Coloradans, hurts what we care about, I'll be an Attorney General who'll fight for the people of Colorado. I won't sit back and just wait for us to get sued. I'll lean in and say, how can I advance our interests, even against the federal government, when they act illegally in ways that hurt us? And we would have standing here. We just have an AG right now who's not acting on the people's behalf.
So Mr. Brockler, a fair rebuttal there? Your response, you have a minute.
Look, it's only fair if you're looking for excuses to use state power to accomplish something else. Look, as the only guy in this race who's actually filed a lawsuit, who's actually had a client in the state of Colorado that has dictated to me their interests, and I look out for them within the confines of the law, not every good idea fairy that's out there. I'm here to, and I'm, by the way, as the DA for Aurora, the most diverse city in the country outside of Brooklyn, New York, I'm here to tell you that my decision making is going to start with, what does the law permit? Do I have a client that will be best served by this? Not by trying to stretch the boundaries of jurisdiction so that I can file lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit to thwart a federal immigration policy that Congress should be fixing.
Thank you. Back to our candidates for state treasurer, and this is a...
Oh, Rob, I have a
Yeah.
follow-up question.
Go ahead,
Well,
yes.
Based on what I just heard, I'd like to ask a philosophical question of you two. Because I'm hearing a lot of talk about politics tonight, and maybe that's because we've got an election coming up. But I think a lot of Americans are concerned about the Supreme Court and the political influence of the court system. And I'm starting to worry about, and if I'm on the wrong side of politics, am I also on the wrong side of the law? Are you guys going to adequately represent members who aren't, or people who aren't in your party?
Let's start with Mr. Weiser. You have a minute and a half, sir.
Joe, you're right. We witnessed recently the statement that the federal Justice Department should only prosecute people of the party not in power. We witnessed one of the more polarized Supreme Court nominations we've seen. We in Colorado have to rise above this. I was just talking about what Lincoln said in his second inaugural address, with malice towards none and charity towards all. We need more empathy in our politics. I want to spend as much time with people I don't agree with as with people I do. What Roy Romer always taught was that all truth is partial. None of us see all of the truth, whether we're talking about immigration, oil and gas, or consumer protection. As an Attorney General, it's my job to represent all the people, to accumulate all the ideas about how we in Colorado have a rule of law system that is fair, that's effective, and that builds trust. And that only comes from a commitment to listen to everybody. We need more of that in our politics. We in Colorado can be a model for the nation about what democracy looks like. And that's why I want to be your Attorney General.
Mr. Brockler, again. The politics of politics, working together, coalition building, your response as far as that office is concerned.
Yeah, listen, I think we can talk a lot about the high-minded philosophy stuff. We can talk about the things that we have done with the massive discretion that we have in our positions that highlight that. Now, my expectation is, with that bell going off behind me, that every single person running for a state office ought to be asked, when have you stood up to your party because you thought it was the right thing to do? And I've done it every single year I've been in office. Google me and something called red flag. I have also been the district attorney who cares not who works for me in terms of party. The number 2 guy in my office is a Democrat. The number 3 person is an unaffiliated person. I think the other thing to know is that it is a partisan process to become a district attorney. We have Republicans, we have Democrats, just like for Attorney General. But once you're elected, there are no Republican victims. There are no Democrat constituents. There are only Coloradans who are entitled to equal protection under the law and the due process of that law when the government moves against them. That's not theoretical for me. I don't have to tell you what I will do when I'm in office because I've been doing it every single day that I have been in office. The issue for an Attorney General for the state of Colorado shouldn't be what is your policy issue on this or that going to be? How will you take on this Republican president or that Democrat president? The only issue should be, will you stand up and defend our laws and our Constitution, whether you agree with them or not? And that has been my entire career.
Thank you. Let's move to our treasurer candidates again, and the Great Colorado Payback. We're going to talk about that. It's always in the headlines for better or worse. The bottom line is it reunites rightful owners with lost cash or property, if you're not familiar with this. Though complaints have mounted about its bureaucratic pace, do you have a plan to improve response time to complaints? Let's start there. And I do want to start with Mr. Young. You have a minute and a half, sir.
Very good. Thanks for the question. This has been a big problem. The Great Colorado Payback is not so great, and we need to fix it. I think there have been some immediate steps that have been taken in the last year or two to implement technology that will improve that response time, but I think more needs to be done. Frankly, what's happened is that there have been lots of ads, TV, and print that have alerted people of the fact that they have property or money in the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund. The problem is they didn't build capacity in the office in order to be able to respond to that many claims that were being put in. So it's incumbent upon the next treasurer, and I stand ready from day one in order to do this work, that we realign the jobs within the office. About half of the personnel in the treasurer's office are involved with this particular activity. And we may have to temporarily add some more people from other parts of that department, or add even temporarily some to handle more claims that are coming in, so that people actually know that they have claims being processed. We have counties that actually have money in the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund and have been waiting for some time to get it back. I don't know why that is, but on day one, I will be reuniting property with the counties that have that money there or that property there. It's going to take some concerted work. We have an audit going on. I will work in concert with the audit in order to make sure that we're doing it right.
Mr. Young, thank you. Mr. Watson, the Colorado Bay Payback Program, addressing its complaints, the backlog, what's your vision in terms of money, manpower to improve the return for these folks that deserve that money, frankly?
Absolutely. So to give you a little context, our state has over $1.3 billion of the people's money. My opponent and his cohorts have already pre-committed over $500 million of the people's money to other government spending items. So we need a state treasurer who's going to go in there and say, you know what, this isn't the state's money. This is the people of Colorado's money, and to fight every single day to return it to their rightful owners. As I said before, the first thing I'm going to do in going to that state treasurer's office is make sure we all understand who our customer is, make sure they understand that it's the people of Colorado, and to figure out how we can become better, smarter, faster every single day to get those assets returned to their rightful owners. And I'm going to do that before I say, let's just go hire more people, because that's the government solution, right? Let's just go hire more people and continue to grow. Well, let's figure out how we can become more efficient with the resources that we have, and let's streamline that process. You know, it's been actually heartbreaking for me. During my campaign, I've had multiple people reach out to me and say, Mr. Watson, I've tried to be collect about $500 to $1,000, whoever it might be, from the state government, and it's roadblock after roadblock after roadblock for over a year. That is wrong, and it's unconscionable. So we need to figure out, how do we streamline that? Government shouldn't be another roadblock for the people. The government should be there for the people and to be serving them every single day. And that's the mindset, a fresh, new outsider's perspective that I'm going to bring to that state treasurer's office.
And if you could, give us one example, if you could, of how you would streamline that process.
Yeah. Well, first of all, again, making sure we understand who our customer is, but also making it a fun process. Yes, we need to make sure we do a diligent, conservative process of how we do this, but let's actually get the assets back to the people. So number one, let's make sure people know about it and communicate about it, and make sure that they could be affected. Make sure that the online system is streamlined. Let's make sure that when they actually make a claim, there's someone there to handle it and to verify if they're the owner, and figure out how we can streamline that process to get those assets back to them, instead of just continuing to roadblock. Because is the government trying to block you from it so it can go spend more of your money? Well, it's already spent over $500 million of your money. So on the current route, that's what they're going to continue to do.
Mr. Young, I'd like to have you give you a minute just to talk about, give us an example of how you see it being streamlined. Advertising, more engagement with the people owed money, getting that money back that's being put into different agencies, etc. Talk to us about that. You have a minute.
Thank you. And I have heard the same kinds of stories out on the campaign trail, people not being able to be reunited with their property in a timely fashion. But there are a lot of people, I think, that don't even know that they have property in the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund. We need to be more proactive as a treasurer's office in finding those people, reaching out to them, communicating with them, and making sure, in fact, that they know that they have property there. We ran into one woman who had been in a car accident in Grand Junction and discovered, in fact, that she had money because we informed her along the campaign trail that she had money sitting there that she thought she had lost as a claim from her car accident. And this is heartbreaking because it really caused her financial distress. So step one is being more proactive, not just TV ads and not just ads in print, but actually identifying people. And nowadays on the internet, you can actually identify them and find phone numbers and email addresses and reach out to them and let them know that they have property there.
Thank you. Going to move to our Secretary of State candidates. Elizabeth, you have the next question.
All right. How concerned are you, and what, as Secretary of State, can and will you do when it comes to campaign finance reform, flushing the dark money out of this system? What do you think has to change here?
And we're going to begin with Jenna. You have a minute and a half.
I'm tremendously concerned about secret political spending. I think it's crippling our democracy. And we have campaign finance laws because in a democracy, people deserve to know who's trying to influence the outcome of campaigns and how they're trying to do it. So the Secretary of State oversees campaign finance. And I want to take a real active role in making sure that our campaign finance laws don't have loopholes. They currently do. So I'd like to work with the state legislature to make sure that we're stopping secret political spending, that people are disclosed, that the definition of electioneering is extended adequately from the primary. There's a loophole right now where the electioneering definition doesn't cover primary until 60 days before the general election. Did you all know that in Colorado, if I sent you a pamphlet that says vote for me, I don't have to put paid by my campaign? I want to make sure people have the facts. So let's close loopholes. Let's give more information. And then as Secretary of State, I want to make sure we're auditing campaign finance filings. And I know that doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world. Oh, she wants to go audit things. But that's how we make sure that foreign money isn't coming in. That's how we make sure corporations aren't dumping in money. That's how we make sure quid pro quo is not happening when it comes to secret, deep-pocketed folks or special interests dumping money into our politics. So I believe in a democracy that transparency has to be the top priority, and hope to work for more transparency as Secretary of State.
Thank you very much. Mr. Williams, same question. Campaign finance reform, flushing out some of this dark money. What have you done? What else needs to be done moving forward? You have a minute and a half, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me start by talking about what we have done. We have worked to address and improve Colorado's campaign finance plan. And instead of sitting back and just saying, it's not my job, we've worked proactively with the legislature. I see Senator Bob Gardner here. He's carried a number of those bills. Those bills that have passed with reforming campaign finance procedures in Colorado passed. They are 2 of the 25 bills my office has successfully passed through a bipartisan way through the legislature, getting support from a Democratic House and a Republican Senate, and signed by a Democratic governor. So we've improved campaign finance systems already in Colorado, but we didn't stop there. When a federal court struck down the constitutional enforcement plan, I met with lawyers from both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party to adopt new regulations to provide for a quicker and more transparent way of addressing campaign finance issues that have arisen. That got support from both parties, so again, working together to get that done. And then it also makes it a quicker process. So instead of lingering on, we immediately respond. Instead of waiting for an administrative law judge, we immediately contact the campaign and say, please fix this. We have been successful in doing this. It is working much better. The reporting deadline we halved so that you actually get quicker responses and you actually get the transparent disclosures you're supposed to.
Thank you very much. I skipped Joey Bunch. Joey was supposed to ask the last question. That's right here, Joey.
That's okay. I'll start. Would you like me to start with the Attorney General?
Yes, yes, I would. You know, you're reading my mind, my friend. Yes, we're going to go back to our Attorney General candidates, and please, go ahead.
Let's talk about marijuana. 3-part question. Would you defend our industry against the federal government? How could we improve these laws? And can your opponent roll a better doobie than you? Take those in any order you'd like.
What's a doobie?
Oh, the Doobie Brothers.
Ah, that's the doobies I know.
That's what we're calling you two.
In all seriousness, we are going to begin with Mr. Brockler, a minute and a half. Joey, clarify the question.
A marijuana cigarette.
Yes, I know.
I'll take number 3 first, most unequivocally, I presume. That's true. First 2 things that we should know, though, are that, and I built this into a past answer. Look, I'm all in for Coloradans governing Coloradans. And we've already made a decision, 55% of us, to not legalize marijuana, but to regulate recreational marijuana. And I'm invested in protecting the will of the people of the state of Colorado. And so all of those things that grow out of this, when you talk about the black market marijuana growth, that is an assault on the will of the people of the state of Colorado who said, this isn't going to be the Wild West of weed. This is going to be a regulated market. And so the approach we've taken in a jurisdiction with a ton of resources, and that's my 1,000,000-person jurisdiction, is to aggressively tackle black market marijuana growth. Just recently, We had a huge bust across Arapahoe County, executing something like 27 separate search warrants for upper middle class homes where 1,100 plants were taken out of some of those homes. That's how you enforce the will of the people of the state of Colorado from the criminal element, and you resist the federal government when they seek to impose their will over the top of us. Now, you asked me how best to prove this, and I have been looking at this issue now for almost a quarter century. From a prosecutor standpoint, defense attorney standpoint, the greatest weakness in our system, it's not those businesses that I've toured, it's not the CEOs that I've met with, it's not the MED guys that I've talked with, it's home grows. That is the Achilles heel to this regulated marijuana market, are people that are allowed to grow marijuana virtually unchecked inside their homes. As Attorney General, I'm going to work to stop it.
Thank you. Mr. Weiser, a minute and a half. Again, the three-part question from Joey. You're good to go.
We'll have to find a range of competitions between George and I. That'll be one of the more interesting ones. What I want to focus on first is what we heard last week, which is compliant marijuana businesses can be subject to federal investigations and harassment. That scares me. That's Washington sticking its nose where it doesn't belong, citing concerns about a black market that we need to address appropriately, but not by harassing businesses that are compliant. And let me pick up a critical point here. You mentioned earlier, Joey, about regulatory law. What we've done with marijuana is to say we're going to regulate it. One critical issue, making sure kids don't get access to marijuana. I'll work hard on that issue. Another critical issue, making sure our regulatory system has the right background music. Sorry. Making sure that our regulatory system is fair, accessible, and transparent. Because a lot of entrepreneurs in this space right now who are here in Colorado are concerned that our system's not keeping up. I've got an expertise in regulatory law, which is a lot of what our Attorney General's office needs to do. And if our system pushes out entrepreneurs to other countries or other states, we lose our first mover advantage. Part of what we did in legalizing marijuana is turn something that was a dumb focus of criminal justice, putting marijuana users in jail, and create an engine for economic opportunity. I want to make sure we keep that.
Thank you.
If I may, I've got a follow-up question. Do we have the law enforcement mechanisms to find the cheaters in the marijuana system?
Let's start with Mr. Brockler. You have a minute.
I think we're starting to. And we're starting to see some of that marijuana tax money, which, by the way, ain't nobody knows where that stuff goes, right? I mean, we need a website called where'smypottaxmoney.com so you can see where it's all going. Well, we start to see some of this money coming in the form of grants. The problem is that money can't sustain a task force that can go tackle the black market marijuana approach that we've taken here out in the rurals, like Huerfano County, one of the poorest per capita counties around. We don't have the ability to do that. But I do want to comment on this. I've only been doing this 24 years. We have not been jailing people for possession of usable amounts of marijuana. You'd have to smoke marijuana at your sentencing hearing, blow the smoke in the judge's face, and even then, it was an open question. What we have always done is take a proactive, progressive approach that has a libertarian bent to it to trying to regulate things that put us at risk. And let's make no mistake, no matter what we do to enforce the regulatory marijuana market, there is a greater risk to our kids out there. That came with the amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Weiser?
First, as to the criminal justice system of marijuana, talk to those people with records today for using or selling marijuana. Let's see about expunging those records. Because we've decided it's not a crime anymore. People who were punished for it, we need to give them the opportunity of not having that on their record. And as for tools, we need more tools, creative ones, to make sure that these regulatory approaches that keep marijuana away from kids, that has proper labeling, and make sure it's used properly and not into the black market, we've got to work on that. That's a creative challenge, the sort of creative regulatory challenge I've worked on over my career, including in 2 administrations and in the White House. This is what we in Colorado can do. Be a model for the nation on marijuana, on water, on oil and gas. These are hard problems. We can face them together.
Mr. Brockler, quickly, about expunging the records, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, look, right now we have a vehicle for that. It's called a pardon, that a governor with guts has the ability to use as often as they'd like to, based on almost any standards that they set. The problem with taking the approach that now that we have legalized a certain element of previously criminal conduct is that it doesn't take into consideration things like plea bargains off of larger cases. And I'm telling you this, it is one thing to have been convicted of possessing usable amounts of marijuana. It is another thing to be a drug dealer and to be a distributor of a controlled substance. That can't be a matter of automation. It can't be a matter of mandate. That has to be an individual case review process. And whether we change the law or not, you should know the governor can do it right now without any further incentive from us. This is a big deal. Criminal justice reform matters to me in a big way. I have written op-ed pieces about it and published in the Washington Times. I've talked about it with the NAACP in front of groups. This piece right here is important, but it's not fixable with a mandated automatic law.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you had a follow-up.
Right. You were talking about protecting the kids, and one thing that we keep covering is vaping and juuling, and that's the next big thing, the big tobacco thing. All these kids are becoming addicted to vaping and juuling. Is there anything that you could do in our state to protect our state's kids from that?
Start with Mr. Weiser. You have a minute.
The important role of an attorney general is to realize all the tools you do have. Consumer education and outreach are critical tools. We need to go to schools and make sure that we're letting people know about the dangers of drug use. And the vaping concern you have is real. Both George and I have teenage daughters. You can pray for both of us. And it's critical that we give parents the tools as well. The challenges we have are how do we make sure that people don't just start using and not realize what happens. And the opioid epidemic is a powerful example of that. It became a party drug, leading to overdoses. We have to be aware, and we have to start with education, and we've got money to do it. We've got to organize it and manage it effectively.
Thank you. Mr. Brockler?
Yeah, look, bottom line is this, and my kids all go to public school. I mean, the public school safety piece matters to me. But what we've failed to do is to defend against this now popular belief that it's just marijuana. That permeates juries when they try to decide whether or not is someone under the influence of marijuana when they go careening down our highways that we can't protect ourselves from. And it permeates our juveniles. They have bought off on the campaign that sold us Amendment 64 that marijuana is somehow harmless, and it is not. I was told the black market would go away when we passed Amendment 64. We know it's only been professionalized. We know that instead of low-potency street swag sold behind the 7-Eleven down the street, it's this incredibly potent, having nearly psychedelic impacts on kids' minds. My concern is, if you don't arm law enforcement with more tools to punish those who give marijuana to our kids outside the law, we're going to have a generation of Jeff Spicolis from Fast Times at Ridgemont High before we figure out what we've done wrong here. As your Attorney General, I will continue to fight to protect your kids and mine.
Thank you. Quickly, I did want to mention, I do know where some of the marijuana profits are going in Pueblo County. It's actually funding about 500 scholarships for kids. I just want to throw that out there. So there is some accounting in a very positive way. Our friends in Pueblo viewing tonight, plan to give them a shout out. So anyway. Okay, moving on again to our treasurer candidates here. And
are you sure? Because I thought this was just going to be Phil and I the rest of the night.
Well, I didn't get to answer the other question, so I yielded in my time.
Moving on to our treasurer candidates, we're running out of time, so we need to move this forward a little bit. Tabor, always an issue, every election cycle. I'm going to start with Mr. Watson. What measures, reviews need to take place regarding Tabor, its formula of population growth, inflation, to determine how much money the state can keep? Is it in good shape, in your view, right now? Does something need to change in terms of the formula, or just doing away with Tabor altogether? You have a minute and a half.
So as a resident of Colorado and someone that owns commercial real estate assets in 16 states throughout America, I have to say I'm very thankful for Tabor and what has done to Colorado. You know, so many of these states have just gone on a spending spree, and that's why so many people are fleeing other states and coming to Colorado, because at least from a government spending perspective, at least it's kept in somewhat of check. My opponent has made comments that he doesn't like Tabor and would like to see it diminished. I believe the government should be constrained, and if the government wants to spend more money, it should come to us, the people of Colorado, and ask us for approval, because otherwise it will just continue to run off the tracks. In terms of the mechanisms where we are right now, you know, there is an issue that's brewing when you look at Tabor and you look at the Gallagher Amendment and some other things that are impeding Colorado. One of my concerns is that right now we have a very strong economy in most areas in Colorado, yet our government still doesn't have enough money to do what it wants to do. If you can't figure it out in this economy, what's going to happen if the economy goes down again? And eventually it will. There's a natural law of gravity. What goes up eventually comes down. And so we need to make sure we're very good stewards, properly planning, and making sure that we keep the people of Colorado and those dining room table economics at the forefront of every single conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Young, you have a minute and a half. Your perspective on Tabor as we see it today.
Absolutely. Tabor has been around since 1992. The Gallagher Amendment that actually dealt with exploding residential property taxes came in 1982. The two of them were never designed to work together, and they've been in our Constitution for quite a while. I think it's time, because Colorado is a lot different now than it was in 1982 and 1992, to take a good hard look at how those two amendments interact. They aren't working for us, they're working against us. My opponent has just said that the economy is serving the entire state or most of the state well. I can test that. I come from a rural county and have lived in that rural county for most of my adult life. The economy is struggling in many parts of rural Colorado. If you don't have a resort in your mountain town, you have trouble with funding your schools. And the same is true down in the valley and on the eastern plains. So we need to actually work together to figure out how we can get Tabor and Gallagher to work for us instead of against us, so we can move our state forward. Yes, we have a hot economy. We see it going like gangbusters here from Colorado Springs up to Fort Collins. But we need to have an economy that works for everybody in the state of Colorado. And I'm committed to actually work with everyone in the state of Colorado to make that happen.
Thank you. We have time for one more question for our Secretary of State candidates. Joey, I believe you're up.
Well, elections get all the attention in the Secretary of State's office, but you guys have a vital role in helping small businesses. Wayne, tell us what you've done, and Ms. Griswold, tell us what you will do to help small businesses in Colorado.
And we'll start with Mr. Williams. You have a minute and a half.
So we've done a number of things to make it easier for businesses. First, we've put as much as possible online. Today, you can file as a nonprofit online in ways you could not do before, as a business in ways you could not do before. We've also, by the way, the office doesn't get tax dollars. We run entirely on fees. So we've kept those fees very low. In fact, I've slashed fees. Our business renewal fee, the primary fee, at $10 is the cheapest in the nation. So we've done that. As a result of these changes, we've helped 100,000 new businesses get started here in Colorado. But that's not all. I worked with Governor John Hickenlooper to adopt mybiz.colorado.gov. So now, instead of having to go to each of the state agencies separately, you can go to a single site that walks you through not just my process, but also Department of Revenue, Department of Labor and Employment. So making it easier for businesses than ever before in Colorado. We also answer the phone. So I had a wonderful letter from the San Luis Valley Animal Welfare League telling us that they appreciate having things available online, but they said something unique for government. They said, when we call, you answer, and your staff is, and I quote, invariably helpful and cheerful. That's not something every government can say.
Thank you. Jenna, you have a minute and a half.
The Secretary of State's employees are wonderful, and I do think Wayne has taken big steps in the right direction when it comes to helping small businesses. But I think there's more that we can do. I grew up very working class. I'm the first person in my family to go to four-year college and then law school, and I own a small business. And one of the things that I know is true is that you don't know what you don't know. So say you start your business for a first time and you say, okay, I might need an LLC, I might need a business entity. You find your way to the Secretary of State's page, and it's easy to register a business. But you might not know that MyBiz Colorado is sitting out there on another page. You might not know that there's workman's comp you have to opt in or opt out, all the local regulations, unemployment insurance. All that has to be streamlined right where you register your business so that every Coloradan, when they're opening their business for the first time, really has the tools they need to succeed. And that's what I would hope to do as Secretary of State. Along those lines, I do believe that this office and this election comes down to leadership. And when we're talking about the election sphere of the Secretary of State, I believe it's the Secretary of State's duty to make it easier for eligible people to vote. And look, my opponent has executed the laws. He's fought against proposals that make it easier. Universal mail-in ballot. The fact that you receive a universal mail-in ballot, Wayne fought against. Same-day voter registration. Sorry, there was a text message out there. And I would say he fought against the DHS resources that helped us secure our cyber and provided cyber resources after our elections were targeted. I plan to take a different approach and make sure that we're fighting for Coloradans, making sure eligible people can vote, and fighting to double down on our cybersecurity in elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Had to give her a few more seconds, the message. And I forgot to tell you to turn your cell phones off, people. That's mine right here. Anyway, thank you all. We had an opportunity to get as many questions in as we can. We didn't have any opening statement, but we are going to have a closing statement from each of the candidates, 2 minutes each. So we're going to start where we end where we started. And so I flipped a coin earlier. There's the coin right there to prove my worth, and we're going to start with the Attorney General candidates. Mr. Weiser, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you all for being a core part of our democracy. We need informed, engaged citizens to understand the differences that different candidates will bring. Your lawyer gets to exercise a lot of discretion. Does your lawyer sue local governments, or does your lawyer work with local governments? Does your lawyer protect your access to health care or sit on the sidelines? Does your lawyer take on pharmaceutical companies who lie to people, causing the opioid epidemic, and bring home a settlement to bring more drug treatment? Those are important questions. I want to be your Attorney General because I believe that my experience working in the Justice Department, spearheading consumer protection cases, at the Supreme Court on important issues of constitutional law, here in Colorado, the University of Colorado Law School, as a professor and as the dean, we've got a range of challenges, and I believe, whether it's marijuana, oil and gas, or water, we can get through them together. And we need an Attorney General who leans in to work on these issues, bringing all the tools in the office. We've talked about them. Sometimes it's bringing a case. I've done that. Sometimes it's working on regulations. Sometimes it's legislation. Sometimes it's making sense of the laws we have. This is hard work, and there are 500 people in the office, and what we need is someone who brings initiative and innovation and energy and a commitment to protecting people. It's the people of Colorado who together need to chart what issues, what values we want our lawyer to lead on. I've put all this on my website, philforcolorado.com, even an easy contrast page to look at what these issues are. And my request of all of you is to show this country what democracy looks like. Respectful discourse, listening, and voters making a decision. Thank you so much for being a part of that. I'd be honored to have your support.
Thank you. Mr. Brockler, you have 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes.
Priorities. Go Buffs, baby. Beat those Trojans. Come on, man. We got to have that today. That's right. I see Kyle wanting to clap. Listen, I'm a Colorado kid. Grew up in middle-class Lakewood. What drew my parents out here from the East Coast all those many decades ago was the promise of opportunity, of family, of community, of personal responsibility. I got married here. I had all my kids here. I buried my mother here. I am an attorney here, other than my time on active duty for 24 years, standing up and fighting for clients of all kinds on all kinds of legal issues. Everything that's important in my life is within the borders of this state. And when I tell you that I want to be your champion, I want to be the person that defends Colorado and Coloradans from all those who would seek to harm us under our laws, internal and external. I don't say that as a matter of philosophy or perspective thinking. I say that as a matter of my entire history as an attorney in this great state. Now, I'm going to do something crazy here and yield back to you some of this time, but before I do, I want to leave you with this. No team hires as its team captain someone who's never played the sport. No country promotes to its army's general someone who has never seen battle. Even if that general won't pick up a rifle and storm the front lines, they'll be in charge of the ones that do. If you trust me with your vote, if you honor me with your vote, I promise you, you will get my best. And I promise you not to do what I think you want me to do. I will do what you have told me I can do with your laws. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Good luck. Let's move on to the State Treasurer's Office, and we begin with Mr. Watson. You have 2 minutes.
Well, I want to thank the Elpamar Foundation again, and for each and every one of you showing up, whether in these seats or on the TV. You know, I want to encourage all of you, regardless of your political affiliation, go out and do a job interview and decide who's best for that office, who has the experience. I'm the only statewide candidate that grew up in the Western Slope, in the little town of Olathe, known for its sweet corn. And everything about the Western Slope is in my blood. An appreciation of grit and stewardship and hard work. A love of the outdoors and hunting and fishing and all those wonderful things. In fact, my mascot is my horse Apache. I went to school up in Boulder, go Buffs, and started my company 18 years ago from nothing. And I've been blessed and fortunate in building it up to over $1.3 billion of assets around the country. For almost 2 decades, every single day, I'm looking for the best investment alternatives and try to get the best investment returns for my investors. Well, I want to bring all that business and investment experience to the State Treasurer's Office to make a positive difference, because I really do believe that experience matters. You know, one of the things we didn't talk about tonight was para, and we should, because to me, para should not be a political and partisan issue. It should be a people issue. It's people like my sister, who's a school teacher up in the Boulder Valley School District, and every single day she's working really hard, and she hopes that there's going to be a pension plan for her and for her family. And that not only affects the 600,000 people depending on para, but also all of us in Colorado, because we're spending $230 million a year in interest payments alone on para. We can't afford another career politician looking for the next paid political job. This stuff matters. We need someone who's going to go in there, who's going to figure out how to become better, smarter, faster for government, to remember who the customer is, the people of Colorado, and someone who's going to be a true statesman. I have no desire to be a politician. They're interested in their own skin in the next election. I want to be a statesman, someone who cares about you and is going to have the spine to do something about it. Learn more at brianwatson.vote.
Thank you very much. Dave Young, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. Thank you for your time, and those that are online and watching on TV. This is the democratic process. I am not just a Colorado native, but I'm a Colorado Springs person. I graduated from Mitchell High School, grew up here, and yay Marauders, gotcha. And so it's a pleasure to be back here. Frankly, ended up going up to CSU and getting my undergraduate degree in mathematics, but did go to CU to get my master's degree, so it's all good. I landed a job teaching in 1975 in Greeley. I taught math, science, and technology at a junior high, which was great preparation for the legislature, by the way. And, you know, I love that job. It's heart and soul for me, and it's what I deeply care about. I've had the opportunity now for the past 7 years to be a state representative in Greeley. I've been a voice for rural Colorado, a strong advocate for our seniors, and fought for education funding on a regular basis. But what got me into being a state representative was the fact that I have a sister who's severely disabled. She lives in Pueblo West, but she also grew up here and struggled to find the services that she needed. And I could see that she wasn't the only one that was struggling to get those services. So I actually ran to fix a system that was mistreating our most vulnerable. And that's a big section of the work that I've done in the legislature. I stand ready today, based on the work that I've done in the legislature, and particularly on the Joint Budget Committee, from day one to take charge of the Treasurer's Office. I will be there full-time every day, providing the oversight that is needed in that office. I won't have my attention split because I'm still running another business. I will give my entire full attention to the office, and there's a reason why it's an elected position. You want to be well represented. I have 7 years of representing everyone across the state of Colorado, and I look forward to doing that as your next state treasurer.
Thank you. Finally, our Secretary of State candidates, and General Griswold, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I grew up in rural Colorado, and I grew up very working class. You know, my mom, when we were growing up, would work 2 jobs, and we would still have to go to food banks. So I started working the summer after 7th grade and saw that a lot of Coloradans were struggling. That's why I went to college. That's why I'm the first person in my family to go to a 4-year college. That's why I went to law school. And that's why I know how important it is for every eligible Coloradan to have their voices heard and their vote to count. I believe that the Secretary of State should expand access to voting. That's why I plan to expand automatic voter registration and make sure that we fix that system that causes the 2 to 3 hour lines on election day. As Secretary of State, I won't comply with a sham presidential commission intending on chilling participation in our democracy. I will champion transparency. I think we have to stop secret political spending and make sure that special interests and politicians play by the rules. You know, as the only woman candidate up here, I do want to take a moment to address all the women who were overlooked by Senate Republicans in the confirmation of the Supreme Court new justice. And I want to say, I am proud to be on a ticket of people like Jared Polis, like Phil, like Dave, who believe, unlike Donald Trump, unlike Wayne Williams, and unlike the Republicans up here, in Roe and a woman's choice. I also think that we need to make sure that DC politics does not come to Colorado. I believe that it's unethical that my opponent has undisclosed clients on the side and that he has paid for his bar fees with state funds. I plan to be a full-time Secretary of State working exclusively for the people of Colorado. I think it's time for new leadership and fresh ideas, and I humbly hope and ask for your support coming up here on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wayne Williams, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much to KOAA, to the Gazette, to Elpamar, and because I'm the state's chief election official, Kyle, thank you for all 12 years of service. Regent served 6 years terms. So just to clarify that, thank you to all of you who've spent the time with us today, listening. Hopefully some of you approached it. I know a lot of people already showed up here supporting somebody, but viewers and others, hopefully you've seen some differences and an opportunity for what I've done. Most importantly, I want to thank my wife, Holly, who's sitting in the front row. When I told her 5 years ago I wanted to take a $19,000 pay cut to run for Secretary of State, she was not jumping up and down. Nor was she crazy about the idea that I drive from Colorado Springs to Denver every day. But she's helped support me in that sacrifice, and I very much appreciate that, dear. So let me talk real quick. Lowest business fees in the nation, 100,000 new businesses. Highest percentage of registered voters in the United States of America of any state. Highest voter turnout in the last presidential election of any place in America. According to both the Washington Post and the Homeland Security Secretary, the safest state in America to vote. That's the record I'm running on. I'm fortunate and blessed to have the support of many people across the political spectrum. In fact, the majority of Democratic clerks who've endorsed in this race have endorsed my reelection because they have seen that day after day, I have been there to deliver what you expect out of a Secretary of State, which is fair and open and nonpartisan elections. I'm running on that record. My name is Wayne Williams. I would very much appreciate your support for my reelection as Colorado's Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we want to thank all of our candidates. Phil Weiser, George Brockler, thank you very much. Brian Watson, Dave Young, thank you. Janet Griswold, Wayne Williams, thank you.
I see yours is going up there. I look like I was terrified.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rob Quirk with News 5. I want to welcome all of our viewers and our listeners online and on air to our continuing election 2018 coverage here on News 5. We also want to recognize our partners here, the El Pomar Foundation. We are coming to you live from the Garden Pavilion here on the campus of the El Pomar Foundation. Also, we want to extend our thanks to the Gazette, also Colorado Politics. These debates that we've been carrying previously and now the race for governor being carrying online at KOAA.com, Gazette.com, and ColoradoPolitics.com. And again, terrific night, great opportunity to bring the candidates face-to-face to viewers and listeners across southern Colorado. We want to welcome our two candidates. To my immediate left is Republican candidate for Governor Walker Stapleton. Mr. Stapleton, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
And to his left is the Democratic candidate, Jared Polis. Mr. Polis, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having us.
I do want to mention before we get started here, please, we had a lot of interruptions during our previous debate, and we know you all support your candidates, but we really are wasting everyone's time by continuing to interrupt with that loud clapping. You know who you support. Let's just keep it down so we can get more questions asked. And let's start right now, shall we? We're going to begin our two panelists, our Joey Bunch with the Gazette and Colorado Politics, and my co-anchor on News 5, Elizabeth Watts. Joey, we're going to start with you, and our first question will be directed to Mr. Polis.
Well, the most important issue Coloradans have identified in this election is health care. And Jared, Walker has characterized your universal health care plan as single payer. Tell me why it's not, why universal care is not single payer.
And first, let me thank the El Pomar Foundation. It's always wonderful to be here in El Paso County. It's been an amazing honor for me to have served 9 years on the Board of Visitors of the Air Force Academy, to have founded Patriot Boot Camp, to help train many veterans to start their own businesses. I'd be, of course, happy to address your question, Joey. Of course, I have a goal of achieving what every other industrialized nation has, and that's universal health care. But as somebody who's met payroll, who's had to pay for health care benefits as a business, and as somebody who's worked legislatively, I understand that what we need to focus on is saving people money on their health care bills today, not tomorrow. Because across the aisle, whether you're Republican or Democratic or Independent, Coloradans are tired of being ripped off. And we should be, because we should be tired of paying 5 to 10 times as much for the exact same prescription drug that's available in Canada or Germany for a fraction of the price. Insulin, which keeps many people alive and healthy, has gone up 1,000% in the last 15 years. Same product, 1,000% greater cost. We're willing to roll up our sleeves and take on the prescription drug companies to end price gouging, to use our leverage in Medicaid and the exchange, and yes, even within states, working with other states to negotiate better rates for prescription drugs, to pass those savings along to Colorado residents. I think we need good ideas from the left, the right, and the center. And what will be my North Star, Joey, is when we have an idea that's being presented, will it reduce costs, will it expand coverage, and will it maintain or improve quality? If it does, I will get behind it and I will make it happen.
Hey, Jared, if I could ask a follow-up to that, isn't that single payer?
Well, we have a payer nationally called Medicare, which is our largest payer. It covers seniors today, which are our highest cost population. I've long advocated, along with, for instance, Senator Bennett, opening up Medicare as an option for other younger people. I think there's a lot we can do on both the public and private payer side, but fundamentally, we need to save people money. And there's a variety of ways that we can do that with good ideas from conservatives, liberals, and moderates to get it done.
Could you just give us one example? Just give us
Sure.
one example.
Implementing bundled payments within Medicaid like Arkansas has done, which has resulted in 20 to 30% savings to their Medicaid system, allowing for expanded coverage. One more, if I may, pricing transparency to allow the market mechanism to work to bring down rates, because right now it's very secretive who's paying what for whom, with several different payers, public and private, paying the different rates for the exact same thing. So for markets to operate, there needs to be competition. We want to see more competition in the provider side of healthcare.
But is that feasible, Jared? I mean, you're one governor in one state, and you're going to have to work with a lot of other states. What's the mechanism that this is going to happen?
Some of the items we can take action on at an executive level, like reconfiguring the pricing regions to address some of the disparities in pricing between Western Colorado and the Front Range. Others will need to work with Republicans and Democrats in the legislature on pricing transparency, ending price gouging on prescription drugs. Medicaid bundled payments was implemented by Republican legislatures in Arkansas. We would use that as our model for what we want to do here in Colorado to save money on Medicaid and pass some of those savings along to people who pay for their insurance today.
And I do have one quick follow-up again, and that is that one of the criticisms of this bundling is that there's exclusions, that, some of the extreme care is not a part of the bundling. How do you maintain coverage for all within a bundling system that you've advocated?
So what it basically does is it aligns incentives better. Let's just take the example of pregnancy, because it's a good example. It's also, frankly, a common one that Medicaid often pays for. When you have a pregnancy, if we have a bundled rate for pregnancy, it's the incentive of everybody involved, from the doctor to the provider to the hospital, to do it in the best, most healthy way that decreases complications. If you have providers along the way making additional money from unnecessary C-sections, making additional money from unnecessary amniocentesis, you're creating the wrong incentive structure that not only doesn't result in any better health outcome, but drives up costs in health care.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth, you have a question for Mr. Stapleton, same topic.
Yes, healthcare. Explain the specific costs, logistics, and time frame of your plan to create a task force to improve administration of Medicaid.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I was starting to feel like the kid that was trying to get in the game of catch. Nobody's fallen asleep tonight, given the temperature in here. Thank you very much to El Pomar for having me. I am a proud board member of the El Pomar Metro Council, and it is a fantastic organization for the state of Colorado. I believe we've come out with a health care plan to invest in mental health, to make sure that Medicaid is sustainable for our most vulnerable population, which is young people, even though they only represent about a quarter of the cost. We've talked about ways that young people can have plans with higher deductibles, catastrophic health insurance, where they will pay less for their premiums, because in Western Colorado, as many of you know, we have 14 of 64 counties where individuals have one choice of health care provider, and where they've had double-digit increases of premiums the last couple of years. I was proud to join a statewide effort with Governor Ritter just a few years ago to defeat a state-run health care proposal. And the reason why we joined forces in a bipartisan way to defeat it is we knew that it would bankrupt Colorado. Congressman Polis is the sponsor of the House bill for universal Medicare, along with Congressman Ellison, which is the House version of Bernie Care. And the thing about Bernie Care is that Bernie Care was tried in Vermont a couple years ago by the Democratic governor. And the idea behind it is that you will replace deductibles, premiums, and copays with taxes. And so the governor of Vermont said the way we're going to pay for this is an 11% corporate tax on all businesses, payroll tax, which Congressman Polis has already said he supports, a payroll tax, and a 10% extra tax on all individuals. And that didn't work out so well, so he had to pull it. Congressman Polis's contemporary, who is the gubernatorial nominee in New Mexico, has said the numbers simply don't work with his universal health care plan. And what would happen is he would double your income taxes, and he would double every business tax, and nobody could afford to live or work in Colorado anymore. And that is an extreme radical plan that won't work for Colorado's young. It won't work for Colorado's old. In fact, the Kaiser Family Foundation has said that his plan will kick 300,000 seniors in Colorado off Medicare. That is not the way forward that we want.
And I just want to follow up on the creation of the task force. Presumably it would be a system whereby you would look at the existing system for Medicaid. Streamlining means what in terms of basically kicking people off these Medicaid rolls with the expansion that we've seen under the Obamacare plan. So please explain how that would work.
Medicaid is the way forward. Medicaid needs to be sustainable for all, and we need to look at all the different government agencies that are involved in Medicaid expansion, which includes HCPF, the Department of Health Services. It includes the Healthcare Exchange. There are a number of government agencies which play a role in Medicaid expansion. And sometimes when you have a lot of government agencies playing a role in expansion, you get into a bureaucratic turf war. And I would like to review the way HCPF has administered Medicaid expansion in Colorado to make sure that they're doing it in the most effective manner, that there's not double billing, that there's not fraud, that there's not people that are not being counted. And that will happen through the leadership of a new governor. And we also need to review the exchange, because the exchange has not fulfilled its promise. It's only enrolled about a quarter of the people that it was supposed to. Insurance carriers, major insurance carriers have left the exchange, and premiums have increased more than they should. So I will review all that with all the agencies that are involved in Medicaid expansion to make sure that we can deliver on our promises to Coloradans.
Thank you very much. Going to move on to the next question, a little bit a different topic here. And again, we're going to start with Mr. Walker this time. With the ascension of Justice Brett Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court, it's possible the conservative majority could overturn Roe v. Wade, making abortion an issue to be taken up by individual states. How would you handle such a controversial issue? Where do you stand when it comes to reproductive rights? What would you have the state do? You have a minute and a half.
Well, I've said repeatedly that I will be a pro-life governor. I've also said repeatedly that I accept that Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. When I put my hand on the Bible to enforce and defend the U.S. Constitution, it's not an a la carte offering. You don't get to pick and choose parts of it that you like and you don't like. And I'm not going to speculate on what the future is at the Supreme Court, because the two most recent justices to the Supreme Court wouldn't do so during their hearings. But I will tell you that it's been embedded in Colorado's Constitution since the mid-1990s that taxpayer funds should not be used for abortion-related services. I will make sure that that is the case. Congressman Polis has not said whether he will make sure that that is the case during his time as governor. And I do have a disagreement with Congressman Polis when it comes to allowing a woman to make a decision to abort a baby a minute before the woman is to deliver. To me, that is unconscionable as a father. I think that is extreme in terms of supporting a very, very late-term abortion, and I am not for that. But that's what I will say on the issue. Thank you.
Right, and what a perfect opportunity. Mr. Polis is standing right there. We would like you to respond to what you just heard from Mr. Stapleton, but generally speaking, the issue that could face Colorado as it relates to the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Well, I don't think Walker Stapleton will be able to hide behind the Roe versus Wade precedent if he were governor, which is an important reason that if you care about reproductive rights, if you care about privacy, that we elect a pro-choice governor. And I'm proud to be pro-choice. Not that any of us envy the decision, the horrible decision that a woman might face if she's facing a medical decision or unable to raise a child. But I don't think that should be Walker Stapleton's decision. I don't think that should be my decision. It should be between a woman, her doctor, and God. And I respect a woman's right to make her own informed decision with regard to her reproductive health. And I think we can do more as a state and as a society to reduce abortions by reducing unwanted pregnancies, like increasing the availability of long-acting birth control, LARC, which is a proven track record of reducing unwanted pregnancies, making sure that we have better health education in our schools and empower young women and men to make the right decisions to avoid unwanted pregnancies.
Thank you very much. Next question, Joey Bunch, and if you could direct that to Mr. Polis, please.
Well, It's really the same question for both of you. We have a real problem in this state. One of the biggest problems is transportation. But we don't have a lot of agreement about where the money comes from to pay for it. We've got two issues on the ballot this year. 109 that would take about $260 million a year out of our state budget to pay back $3.5 billion in bonds. But it doesn't come with a tax increase. And then we've got 110 that would raise the state sales tax by 0.62 cents. Which do you support? And if neither one of them pass, where do we get the money to pay for roads and bridges?
First of all, this is a critical issue in southern Colorado as well as across our state, whether it's the Gap, whether we're talking about many of our deteriorating rural roads, whether we're talking about access to our mountain communities on Highway 70. I fought to deliver national highway funding to Colorado as a representative of northern Colorado, whether it was the Highway 36 project where we helped get the Tiger grants to help fund it, establishing Highway 70 all the way from Eagle County to Utah as a high priority national freight corridor, opened up an additional streams of funding. I know how to make sure that we assemble all the stakeholders to actually get it built and get it done. And that includes the federal government, the state government, local government, often the private sector in terms of support from the business community, and public-private sector partnerships. There's a big difference between how Walker Stapleton and I would handle it. I oppose going deeper into debt without a dedicated funding source. That's what number 109 would do. It would create billions of dollars in debt for our state that taxpayers are responsible for, taking money out of our schools and driving up health care costs, especially in tough budgetary times. I think that if you're going to fund something, you have to figure out how to pay for it up front. The Denver Chamber and others have moved forward with an Initiative 110 that I haven't taken a position on because I've said it's not how I would pay for it, but I respect the efforts of the business community and others to actually pay for infrastructure rather than leave it to you and your kids to pay billions of dollars of debt as Walker Stapleton's plan would do.
Thank you, Mr.
But Jared,
Stapleton.
if I may here, but how do you pay for it?
Yeah. So as a dedicated funding source, I'm open to building a consensus between the business community, Republicans and Democrats. If you are going to use the sales tax mechanism, I'd like to see a way where we can have some pre-refunding and make sure it doesn't hurt our economy. I think we want to make sure that if you use another mechanism, that it's a stable funding source over time. Another big difference, some of the funding sources that Walker Stapleton has identified, and probably we'll talk about, a gaming tax and marijuana, are completely insufficient for this purpose. Even if our gaming tax produced the same amount of revenue as Nevada, it would take 600 years to fund the current infrastructure deficit in our state. So let's have a real and honest discussion. I believe if you build things, you do need to pay for them. I don't think we need a governor that comes with their own our way or the highway, pardon the pun, for paying for it. But I think the governor needs to make sure that they listen to our local leaders, listen to the business community, and make sure we come up with a plan that meets the needs of our entire state and doesn't leave a legacy of billions of dollars of debt.
Mr. Stapleton, a lot on the plate there to respond to. We'll give we'll give you 2.5 minutes if you need to touch on various accusations that have been made by Mr. Polis.
Well, in order to translate, Congressman Polis saying that he's going to get stakeholders together for consensus building is congressional speak for I haven't the foggiest idea of how to pay for it. And I do. I'm the only candidate in this governor's race that has talked about 4 committed sources of revenue from the general fund. Number 1, I want to take advantage of the budget windfall that economists have told Colorado will be more than $1 billion as a result of the federal tax cuts. A couple $100 million are coming into our general fund. All that money should go to roads. None of that money will go to roads under Congressman Polis because he wants to repeal the president's tax plan. Number 2, I've talked about comparing what Colorado spends per mile to about 8 other mountain states. And if we kept our spending in line, which is more transparency and accountability from the Department of Transportation, who the current governor and the last CDOT head conspired to spend $150 million on new offices for bureaucrats while the rest of us sat in traffic. If we had more accountability in budgeting, we could understand why we are spending more per mile than 8 other mountain states. And if we kept it in line, we could have about $150 million more for roads for the future, for bonding for roads. Finally, I've talked about 2 other areas that we should apply to roads. The American Gaming Association has said that legalized sports gambling will be $150 billion in the United States. I'm for taxing it at 15% gross revenues and applying that. And I've also talked about fixing a broken medical marijuana system where it is literally easier. I don't think we're going to repeal marijuana, and I'm glad that CBDs are being reclassified as Schedule I drugs, but it shouldn't be easier for an 18-year-old to get a medical marijuana card than it is for him or her to get a six-pack of beer. Furthermore, we have many counties in Colorado that have a 50% price disparity between medical and retail or recreational marijuana. That doesn't make any sense to me, because if I had a headache after this debate, which I might have, I'd go to Walgreens and my Advil would be taxed. Some states tax prescription drugs. The feds tax prescription drug imports, and yet marijuana, which counties in the San Luis Valley are dealing with unintended consequences of legalization, illegal grow operations that are stealing water and electricity. We should at least tax this properly and regulate it properly to keep it out of the hands of 18-year-olds.
And just as a following up on the professional gambling aspect of it, as a practical matter, what do you envision in terms of how long that would actually take to basically start infusing revenue into the state of Colorado? And within that period of time, is a tax hike more preferable, or paying off bonds?
No, tax hikes are never more preferable. That's another difference between myself and Congressman Polis. I've fought for taxpayers as Treasurer of Colorado. He's been in Washington fighting with Nancy Pelosi 94% of the time for the last decade. The way I envision this working is that Buffalo Wild Wings, Hooters, these are big chains with a lot of money, and they want sports gambling in Colorado. And it's coming because the Supreme Court has said that it can come to Colorado, and I'm for taxing it at 15%. Whether you're placing a bet on the Rockies, the Nuggets, I don't think it will be a deterrent. I think it will be a massive industry, $1 billion plus industry to Colorado, and it will be one of a couple different dedicated sources of revenue I've talked about for bonding for roads for the long term.
Thank you very much.
Walker,
Elizabeth?
I do have another question on transportation. You're a supporter of 109, which would take $260 million a year out of the state budget. Now, we've got that kind of money now because the good times are rolling. But when the good times aren't rolling anymore and the recession comes around and we have to start making cuts, we've still got to pay back those bonds. What gets cut under your plan?
Nothing gets cut, Joey. I'm going to find the money. I'm going to find more dedicated sources of revenue from our general fund, and I'm going to make sure the Department of Transportation operates in a transparent and accountable way that it really hasn't for the last couple of years. All of us as Coloradans, when we invest our money in our roads and bridges, not multimodal transportation like Congressman Polis wants. He wants to invest in underutilized public transit and mountain biking lanes, which are super cool. I have a mountain bike myself, but I think our needs are so acute that we need to invest in roads and bridges, bridges and roads. And I will make sure that the department is not wasting money, not hiring contractors that have worked for the department on no-bid contracts, not having people go 3 times the distance they should to work on projects, and I will make sure that we have a department that is accountable and transparent to a new governor.
Mr. Polis, I'll give you a minute to respond to anything you just heard.
Well, yeah, I think what you just heard from Walker is Washington speak for I don't have a plan. So look, and there is a legitimate disagreement for the voters to consider on what we value in infrastructure. And I never heard of a mountain biking lane, I have to say. But what I do value is options for people to choose to get to work. And that means, yes, bus rapid transit, yes, bike lanes. There's a proposal, I have to say. But what I do value is options for people to choose to get to work. And that means, yes, bus rapid transit, yes, bike lanes. There's a proposal being evaluated to see if Front Range Rail is feasible, connecting in with the existing light rail system in Denver and bus system. The more options we have for people through freedom of transportation, the more ways we have to save people money. Right, rather than, and for people who want to operate their vehicles, there's less traffic. So you don't invest in underutilized mass transit, you invest in mass transit that people really want and clamor for, because guess what, that's a great way to get traffic off our roads. Of course, lane expansion plays a role. There's no disagreement on that. But I argue it's not just lane expansion, it's looking at all the different aspects of traffic and how we can make sure that people have additional options to get to work and get to the places in Colorado that they love.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you have the next question, and please direct that towards Mr. Stapleton.
This is actually for both of you.
Okay.
Congressman Polis, you've been endorsed by Bernie Sanders and former President Obama. Mr. Stapleton, this week you were endorsed by President Donald Trump. In previous debates, you both positioned yourselves as bipartisan coalition builders. So if you're bending to your party's base with these endorsements, How can we expect you to serve the opposing party fairly and say what you want about the polls, but some of them are showing 15 to 20% of voters are undecided. So what would you want to say to them, knowing that they could swing this election and you have these endorsements?
Mr. Stapleton, we'll give you a minute and a half.
Well, I've said repeatedly that I will work with the federal government on policies that make life better for Coloradans. It's why I was one of the earliest supporters of the federal tax plan, which 73% of Coloradans have benefited from, which repealed the individual mandate for health insurance, that 150,000 Coloradans making $50,000 or less had a phantom tax imposed upon them and got no health care in return. And I will stand up for misguided policies that I think are not in Coloradans' best interests. It's why the Farm Bureau endorsed me, because I said long ago I was concerned about escalating tariffs and their impact on Colorado's agriculture community and the $40 billion and 170,000 jobs it provides to Colorado. And I think that that's what Coloradans should expect in a governor, a strong CEO that works to make life better for Coloradans when the federal government proposes things and pushes the federal government away when they have misguided plans. I am delighted that Bernie Sanders chose not to endorse me. And as much as Congressman Polis may want to make this race between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, it's between Walker Stapleton, who for 8 years has fought as the treasurer of Colorado, and Jared Polis, who for 10 years has decided to be in Washington voting with Nancy Pelosi 94% of the time. We have very different plans for the future of Colorado. My plans won't bankrupt Colorado. They will make Colorado the place that all of us want for future generations to come, and we can all do it together. And
So you welcome the endorsement of President Trump?
Yeah, I'm operating a big tent. I would not welcome the endorsement of Bernie Sanders, but President Trump's economic policies have benefited Colorado and will continue to benefit the state of Colorado, and that's why I've supported them. I'm a big believer in economic growth. Congressman Polis wants to repeal the president's tax cuts. He wants to make it harder for individuals to deduct gifts to nonprofits and companies to deduct gifts from nonprofits, and I don't. So we have difference of opinion. But look, the federal government is not going to determine the way forward for health care in Colorado. The federal government isn't going to determine the way forward for our roads. They're not going to determine the way forward for our education system. A strong executive leader will, who doesn't waste taxpayer money. And that's what I've done as treasurer, and that's what I'll do as governor.
Mr. Polis, the endorsements first, if you could touch on that. And secondly, the point that Elizabeth made about so many undecided voters right now. What is your message to try and bring them into your camp?
You know, however proud Walker is of not being endorsed by Bernie Sanders, I'm 100 times more proud not to be endorsed by Donald Trump. You know what? And I can work with this president or any president. I've worked, in addition to having started companies, met payroll, started and served as superintendent of a charter school. I've also know enough about politics to be able to know how to get Republicans and Democrats to work together to get things done. I'm proud to sponsor bills to expand renewable energy opportunities on public land with Paul Gosar of Arizona, decreasing the red tape and bureaucracy around siting renewable energy projects on public land. I'm proud to have worked with Doug Lamborn and Scott Tipton on public land issues that affect our quality of life here in Colorado. So I think what's important is that we make sure that we have a governor that isn't beholden to any president, Democrat or Republican. I'll stand up to this president or any president that comes after our Colorado way of life, whether they're supporting policies that increases our cost of health care, whether they're supporting huge special interest tax giveaways to overseas corporations at the expense of Colorado families. You know I'll always stand with Colorado families.
Thank you very much. Let's move to education, and this is for both gentlemen here, and it's a two-part question I'm going to start with, and this goes first to Mr. Polis. Amendment 73 would put $1.6 billion in K through 12 education by raising the corporate tax rate and income tax on higher earners. Do you support or oppose that? And if not, what's your plan to put significant dollars into public education here in Colorado? You have a minute and a half. Mr. Polis.
I have not endorsed Amendment 73. I know there's a lot of teachers and others that are fighting for it. I would prefer that we have the flexibility, meaning we do something in statute rather than our Constitution. But I think we need a governor who's ready to build the coalition to end decades of underinvestment in our public schools and make sure that every child has access to preschool and kindergarten. And of course, we have a plan to pay for it, working with representatives like Jim Wilson, Republican, who's long championed free kindergarten. We can use general fund money and use social impact bonds, which pay for preschool and kindergarten out of future savings. There's a school district in Colorado, Westminster School District, that's done that today, that Walker is familiar with. We look forward to being one of the first states that to implement this as a statewide model. Utah is also looking at that as well. I've been proud to have supported mill levies and bonds in various parts of our state, including in hard-to-fund parts. And we need to take a hard look at our education finance, not just the overall levels, but we need to make sure we streamline the system and make sure more money reaches the classroom instead of going to bureaucracy and administrators. And we also need to address inequities in this distribution system between different districts. School districts, fire districts, and other special districts are also affected by the downward pressure of Gallagher, an artificial ratio between commercial and residential property intake. We need to do what we can to, yes, vote the legitimate frustration of voters that they want to see some control and property taxes and that you're able to afford to live where you live, but also something that doesn't depend on whether your economy in your area is more residential than commercial.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stapleton, again, Amendment 73, its proposed infusion of cash into K through 12, income tax on higher earners. Where do you stand? Do you support or oppose this? And if you do oppose it, where are you looking at in terms of primary funding for significant education improvements?
Thank you. I oppose it. As a father of 3 school-aged kids, 10, 7, and 4, I want to make sure that the money we're investing in education goes into the classroom. We've been asked this question at a number of debates, and Congressman Polis never says whether he's for it or against it. He just says something like, I won't endorse it now. What does that mean? I thought it was a yes or no question. The answer is no. He is promoting the idea of free preschool, and I'm the dad of a preschool-age daughter, and I want to make sure that if we're going to make that promise, that we can pay for it. That's about $1 billion promise that would eat up most of the money from Amendment 73. And so you would think that he would then support Amendment 73, but he refuses, I guess, to support it. Look, we did an analysis across our 178 school districts in Colorado to make sure that we're putting Colorado kids first and delivering on our promise to young people. And what we found was really alarming. What we found is, since 2011, the number of students has increased by about 6%, the number of teachers by about 8%, and administrative costs by 35%. In some school districts, we have great transparency and accountability for understanding where dollars are going, and in other school districts, we have no transparency. I believe that as governor, I will ask the Department of Education to have complete transparency across all of our school districts so that all of us who are collectively, as Coloradans, investors in the future of public education can understand why dollars are not flowing in some school districts into the classroom where they belong, and so we can incentivize school districts, not in a punitive way, to actually make sure that administrative costs are kept in check with student and teacher growth. Because in some school districts, if we had done this, we would have close to $4,000 more to pay teachers. Thank you.
I want to, yes, I'll give you an opportunity, Mr. Polis, to respond. You have a minute, sir.
Look, I'm the father of a 4-year-old preschooler as well. Walker and I can afford preschool for our kids. Why should our kids start out at an advantage over families that can't? That's not our values. That's not fair. Oklahoma has preschool and kindergarten for every kid. If I'm elected governor, I'll make it a priority to get it done here in Colorado. It's not just an educational issue. When we know how important those early education years are for kids to get a strong start, it's also a real-life affordability issue for young families. If we care about making our communities more livable, if we care about the high cost of housing, you talk to any young family with a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, the high cost of daycare are preventing them from buying homes close to where they work, putting more traffic on the roads, forcing people to live with their grandparents and parents, and preventing even many young families from making the decision to have kids. We can get it done here in Colorado, working with Democrats, Republicans, the business community, and educators, and it'll improve the quality of life, not only for the next generation, but for parents and grandparents today, because I know my parents appreciate having the kids 2 days a week, but it would really be imposing on them to take those kids 5 or 6 days a week.
Mr. Staple, do you want to respond quickly?
Yeah, this all sounds great, but as all of us know, there are no free lunches in life, and free is really expensive. And the reason Congressman Polis won't level with you tonight and tell you about how to pay for any of his plans is that he knows how to pay for them. I know how to pay for them because I've been the treasurer of Colorado for the last 8 years. And guess what? Here's the bad news. The only way to pay for them is by doubling your personal income taxes. That's his health care plan alone, so maybe tripling. Or else doubling taxes on all businesses, which would make it really hard for Pizza Hut or Merrill Lynch to do business in Colorado anymore. That is not the Colorado that puts Coloradans first. That's a Colorado that saddles us with debt and unfulfilled government promises. And that's not a Colorado I want for my kids or for yours.
Just a quick response on that. As Walker Stapleton knows, the governor and the legislature have no ability to raise taxes in our state. It's only up to the people of Colorado. You need a governor that's a creative problem solver, that doesn't always think like Walker Stapleton does, I'm going to increase your taxes. I'm going to do more with what we have, look at public-private financing mechanisms, and make sure that we do the most with what we have before we ask for a dime more.
Let's talk about more with what we have, and I know that a big discussion point for a lot of people is school safety, where it comes in terms of the spending priorities. Mr. Polis, first, you have 1 minute. Talk about the priority you would put on school security, and in particular, armed guards at every school in Colorado, and is that something you support, and is that something that Colorado voters need to be paying for as we reconfigure perhaps some of the upper echelon of the education system?
Well, as the father of a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, this obviously hits close to home. First, I support some of the measures that Colorado's already taken. For instance, our universal background check law that we passed 4 years ago, has resulted in 1,200 guns that were not sold to criminals as a result without inconveniencing legal gun owners in our state. Walker Stapleton has said he would repeal that universal background checks law. I support it because that's 1,200 criminals that could be coming not just to your home but potentially to your kid's school as well. I think as we look at physical infrastructure, we need to look at single point entry and better physical security of our campuses. We need to have a conversation to encourage partnerships with school resource officers and others. I don't see this so much as a spending priority as a priority of working with school districts to make sure that kids have access to better mental health counseling on campus, referrals if they need it. We need a red flag law in our state that provides a way to put a temporary mental health hold if a child or anybody is going through a mental health crisis on temporarily losing access to their guns until they've recovered. These are things that we can move forward on that'll help improve not only school safety, but all of our safety here in Colorado.
Mr. Stapleton, your response to the proposal of security, safety, spending priorities.
Well, there is nothing that is more important. The worst tragedy that I could ever imagine or that my wife could ever imagine ensuing is sending our kid off to school, and we have 3 grade school age children, and having a tragedy of unspeakable proportions take place. And it is why I've called for practical steps that we can all take as Coloradans to ensure our schools are safe. I've talked about, I will prioritize it so we have a public safety officer in every single school in Colorado that is trained. I will make sure that we have metal detectors in every single school. Just because we have a single point of entry doesn't mean we have to have a single point of exiting. I will make sure that the doctors and mental health professionals that have clients who are a danger to themselves or to their communities have fulfilled their obligations as medical professionals to report those individuals to law enforcement. And yet, if you look at a lot of the mass shootings that have taken place, there has been a systemic failure to do so. But what I won't do is pass municipal gun restrictions like Congressman Polis will that are not even enforceable because the ATF has not clarified weapons at the federal level. This is a misguided government regulation that will not result in less gun violence and will take away people's Second Amendment rights.
Thank you. We're going to move to Joey Bunch, who has the next question, and if you could direct that to Mr. Stapleton.
All right. Walker, your energy plan focuses almost entirely on fossil fuels, yet you say you want to transition to renewable energy. What's your timetable for that? How does that happen?
Well, Joey, I was having lunch last week with an individual who was 55, and he said, the year I was born, fossil fuels represented 83% of the world's energy production. And then I went off to MIT, and during my time at MIT, when I studied as an engineer and a geologist, I was told that during the course of my life, fossil fuels would be largely eradicated. Now I'm 55, and fossil fuels represent 83% of the world's energy production. Furthermore, we've invested approximately $1.3 trillion globally on renewables, and they still represent less than 3% of the world's energy production. I am the only candidate in the governor's race who has an all-of-the-above approach to energy. I'm for wind, I'm for solar, I'm for natural gas, and I'm for oil. But unlike Congressman Polis, I am not for unfunded mandates on the lives of Coloradans who can afford it the least. Because if you talk to energy experts, they will tell you, whether it be Black Hills in Pueblo or Excel in the metro area, that once you get to a 65 or 70% renewables, we don't have the capacity. Because as much as all of us would like it, the sun isn't shining 24/7 and the wind isn't blowing. And so what happens is the capital that gets invested gets returned to the Coloradans who can afford it the least, and they pay more to heat their homes in winter and turn on the lights year-round. That is not the Colorado I want, with skyrocketing utility bills and Big Brother in government telling me how to heat my home and turn on my lights. But that is exactly the type of radical extreme energy policy that Congressman Polis will bring to Colorado as your next governor, should he win.
I want to follow up on that point. I think most people see renewable energy in our future. But are you saying that's a private market problem, not a government solution?
No, we already have federal subsidies for solar, and they're coming up for renewal in the next couple of years. So it's not clear to me what's going to happen to the future of federal subsidies. We have a state tax credit program for renewables, and I support that. But I support the market deciding and the consumer deciding what energy works most efficiently and effectively for them, not government telling me how to heat my home and how to turn on the lights at night.
Well,
Especially if I'm paying more than I did in the past for my utility bills. And that's what every Coloradan will do. Make no mistake, Jared Polis's renewable plan, independent economists have said, will cost Colorado $45 billion. Our budget is $30 billion, $45 billion. And the people that will pay that the most are the hardworking middle-class Coloradans who will see their utility bills go through the freaking roof. And I don't want that to happen.
All right, well, I want Mr. Polis to answer
happen.
These accusations. Mr. Polis, please.
I don't want the oil and gas companies telling you what light bulbs to use and whether to turn off your lights on and off either. And you know what? As Walker Stapleton knows, all these expensive programs he's talking about are not my plan. When that proposal came out, you know I've never supported a 100% renewable energy portfolio standard. Not once during the primary, during the general. Neither did any of the Democrats. Neither do mainstream environmental groups. He's doing something that politicians do in debates. He's attacking a straw man.
So you haven't said 100% renewable by 2040? Is that correct?
Look, absolutely. Absolutely, and we're not using any type of top-down mandate to get there. When John F. Kennedy said in 1961, we're going to get to the moon by the end of the decade, it wasn't a mandate, it was a goal. And he didn't say we're going to get 75% of the way to the moon or 80% of the way to the moon. He said we're going to get to the darn moon, and you know what? America did. And you know what? We deserve cleaner air. And we need to act on climate for our farmers and for our ski industry. And we deserve better rates for ratepayers, which are all of you, which is why Pueblo, Colorado was one of the first cities in the country to announce a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030, and I declared my candidacy there in support of that. Excel Energy will tell you today that new wind energy costs 20% less than existing coal energy. So the sooner we make this transition, not only will it improve our health, because of cleaner air. Not only will it do our part on climate, but it'll save all of us money because the utilities will invest in cleaner renewable energy through the PUC, through making sure that we have lower financing costs for home solar by PACE increment financing, by removing burdens from siting renewable energy projects on public land and reducing bureaucracy and red tape. Yes, we can get there, just as John F. Kennedy said we could get to the moon.
Well, I want to ask a follow-up question. I think you and Walker have found an agreement here, because I think Walker's solution seems to be private market, but yours does too. You say that it's a goal, not a mandate, and it's going to be ground up. I don't see your plan in that equation anywhere.
I would love to have Walker Stapleton endorse my specific proposals to get there, like having PACE financing for home solar, with a senior lien allowing a financing rate of 3 or 4% rather than 9% for home solar, and having a reserve fund to comply with Freddie and Fannie financing requirements. I would love to see Walker Stapleton support my efforts to reduce red tape and bureaucracy around siting renewable energy projects on public land. I would love to see Walker Stapleton support my efforts for state energy performance contracting and passing those results along to ratepayers. I would love to see Walker Stapleton appoint who I want to appoint to the Public Utilities Commission. But I don't think we're going to see that today, because his radical agenda of propping up and subsidizing oil and gas at your expense will simply increase rates in Colorado and contribute to the costly climate change, which we've already seen recent projections is already costing Colorado families money.
Mr. Stapleton, you have a minute to respond to that.
Well, Congressman, in order for me to agree with your plan, I would have to disagree with Governor Hickenlooper, who said that your energy plan was pretty radical. I would have to disagree with Governor Hickenlooper, who
He never said that.
Who begged, yes, he did.
And he supports
yes,
me, by the way, not you.
Absolutely did. He called your plan pretty radical. In addition to that, he had to beg and plead with you 3 years ago when you personally financed a 2,000-foot setback that would have had the same drastic impact on Colorado's economy as this 2,500-foot setback. If you talk to small or medium-sized operators, it would crush 230,000 jobs and take $32 billion out of Colorado's economy. It would take the largest recurring revenue source we have for water conservation efforts. It would take $1 billion from schools. It would take money from cities. It would crush Colorado's economy, destroy jobs, and we would never get them back, Congressman. And we can't have that for Colorado's future.
All right, we're going to move on. All right, please. We're going to move on. Elizabeth, you have the next question. Go ahead.
This is for both of you.
Yes.
What would your administration advocate as it relates to the growing trade war?
And we're going to begin with Mr. Stapleton this time. You have a minute and a half, sir. Growing trade war.
Well, here's it. The trade war is something that I'm concerned about. It's why during my earliest days as a candidate, I talked about the problems of escalating tariffs, especially with respect to what happens to meat exports in Colorado, where we have approximately $600 million of meat exports going to China. And I talked about an escalating trade war with China being bad for Colorado's meat producers like Swift in northern Colorado. It's why I met repeatedly with the farmers and ranchers across Colorado, and why the Colorado Farm Bureau, which contributes $40 billion and 170,000 jobs, endorsed me. Because I heard from farmers and ranchers that we're seeing variations in the price of wheat and corn that were not helpful. And I think that if the administration is going to engage in trade negotiations, and by the way, I think President Trump has done a good job in reaching a better agreement with Canada and Mexico than we have ever had in the past. And I want to make sure that the federal government has an end game in sight. I wasn't a big fan of what happened with the subsidies, and I said so a long time ago. I want to make sure, and the farmers and ranchers want to make sure, that the temporary pain that they have to endure is for long-term gain. And that's what I will do. I will be a governor that advocates for farmers and ranchers and the future of Colorado's ag community, and the Farm Bureau knows it, and that's why they've endorsed me for governor. Mr.
Polis, you have a minute and a half. Same question.
To me, like a lot of things, it's about making the future work for Colorado families. We came from the discussion of energy. I believe in good green jobs that can never be outsourced. There's 600 jobs at Vestas and Pueblo today, building the renewable energy economy, manufacturing wind turbines, making sure that global trade works for Colorado residents, for farmers, for manufacturers, for inventors and owners of intellectual property is absolutely critical. And I believe that we do that best by working together through a rules-based system. I was proud to work with President Obama on expanding opportunities for marketing grown in Colorado products in East Asia. And of course, I stand up to President Trump on any of even the short-term pain that he's causing our farmers and our ranchers here in Colorado today. We need to have a governor that looks to open and expand markets, that believes in making this concept and this trend of globalization actually work to improve our quality of life rather than be something that makes Coloradans or any country suffer. I believe that we're better working together. When you have trade, it's a willing, consensual transaction between two partners, both of whom benefit from that transaction. That's the very economic definition of trade. Trade is beneficial. I will work tirelessly and take on any president who wants to close off markets or make Colorado farmers or manufacturers suffer.
Thank you very much. We're running out of time. We want to get a couple more questions in. This time, the Me Too movement. Let's talk about. The issue has roiled the state capitol again this week. Representative Jovan Melton found this week to have had 2 allegations of domestic violence in his past, pleaded guilty to 1. Mr. Polish, you said he should look in the mirror, make a decision on whether to retire. If you were looking in that mirror in his circumstance, what would you do and why?
Well, look, I think we need to treat all allegations of domestic abuse very seriously. We are a people that believe in both redemption and consequences. And it's that very moral issue that as people of faith, we wrestle with every day to say, yes, if you've done something wrong, as Javon Melton did, and you've paid your debts to society and served your sentence, should you ever be able to run for public office? Well, you know what? We do believe in redemption. When you've served your term, you can run. And it's up to you, in this case Javon Melton, to explain to the people of his district whether he's fully come to terms with his past and whether that informs his passion for fighting for the victims of domestic violence and others in the future. So I think it's something that ultimately is in the hands of the voters where it belongs, and each of us will always struggle as individuals and as humans to reconcile that, yes, we're a people that believe in consequences, and yes, we're a people that believe in redemption.
Mr. Stapleton, we have seen these allegations on both sides at the state capitol. We saw the legislature take some action to try and improve the policing and the accountability as far as these sexual assault allegations are concerned. How do you see the culture at the state capitol now with these types of changes being implemented? What more needs to be done in your view?
Well, in Representative Melton's case, we have documented proof. He pled guilty to a criminal offense. I'm not quite sure why this didn't come to light during earlier years of his service, but to me, it's a black and white issue. It's not a gray issue as it appears to be for Congressman Polis. As the father of a 7-year-old and 4-year-old girl and the husband to a wife, there is a zero tolerance policy for domestic violence to women in any way, shape, or form, ever. This is domestic violence. This is a criminal offense, which Representative Melton pled guilty to, and he should be excused from the legislature. And I will hold Republicans to the exact same standard. We have a no tolerance policy for this, and we should expect nothing more as Coloradans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joey, our next question.
Well, the governor's the titular leader of our state. What leadership can each of you show in moving us past this moment to bridge the divide in the Me Too movement and between men and women in general? What can you do?
Mr. Polis, take that question first, sir. You have a minute and a half.
Well, I think it's first of all important to make sure that we have a workplace that's free of any type of harassment based on gender or not, a place where men and women are empowered to be able to be themselves and to be able to work to the maximum of their abilities and succeed to their maximum abilities. The truth are there are still great disparities in our state. And when you look at the tremendous progress that women have made, you look, for instance, at the computer science program at CSU or CU, and you still see that in some of these high-paying fields, it's predominantly men. We need to make sure that we integrate science, technology, engineering, and math at earlier ages, and I look forward to working with great resources like the National Council for Women in Technology to make sure that we can achieve parity in high-paying fields. Access to capital for women and minorities remains a detriment to entrepreneurs who want to form their own businesses. When I started Patriot Boot Camp 6 years ago to help veterans and military spouses start their own business, we made sure that we serve a lot of minorities and women, military spouses, both women who have served, as well as the spouses of men who have served, by empowering them with the mentorship, the connections, the access to capital, to allow them to succeed. Because while we've made great progress in our state and our country, I think that the fundamental aspect of much of what's going on is the existing imbalance in the power relationship, yes, between men and women, between people of color and white people, and we need to do more to make sure that everybody has the opportunity not just to get by, but to thrive in the Colorado we love.
Mr. Stapleton?
Well, I'm outnumbered in my house. I have three women that I live with each and every day, one son, and a female dog. So, and my youngest daughter said to me recently, "Daddy, I want to be an astronaut." And I said, absolutely. you need to shoot for the stars. And all of young Colorado women need to have their hopes and dreams recognized. And I'm going to be a governor that makes sure that that happens. It starts with equal pay in the workplace. It starts with enforcing that. It starts with Colorado recognizing family leave and supporting the federal government's family leave policies. And it starts with respecting women at home, in the workplace, and not being tolerant of women not being heard. And that is why in the case of Representative Melton, where he has been convicted of domestic violence, there shouldn't be a gray area, Congressman Polis. You should either say that he should stay or he should go. It's not it's a yes or no question.
Well, Walker,
and I say that he should go, and you say it's a gray area because you're really good at triangulating on a lot of things that really negatively impact people's lives. And I'm going to tell it to you straight. I'm going to say yes or no. I'm going to tell you how to pay for stuff. I'm not going to make promises of the sun, moon, and stars and deliver nothing but dirt under your feet. That's not leadership. That is empty government promises. That is saddling our state with debt that we can't afford, and it's making the lives of Coloradans more difficult, including my 2 young daughters and my wife.
Mr. Polis, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Walker Stapleton is the only one here who supports a ballot initiative that would saddle his kids and my kids with over $3 billion of debt. I oppose Initiative 109. I have fought nationally in support of a bipartisan balanced budget amendment. I'm one of just a handful of Democrats that wants to require Congress to balance our budget. I've met payroll. I've built businesses from the ground up. And we need to make sure that there's an intergenerational aspect to this equity as well. And that we don't party today and have the hangover for my kids and Walker's kids.
30 seconds.
I did take a couple math classes in college and happen to have an MBA, Jared, and just doing the quick math, you're saying that I'm proposing $3 billion of debt, but your costs and plans are $90 billion. So 90 minus the 3 that I promised means you still need to come up with, you're still $87 billion short. Which is almost 3 times the size of our entire state budget. So you are, sir, the all-star captain of debt. You were as a congressman, and you will be as governor.
Again, I support actually paying for things, unlike borrowing from our future to pay for things today.
All right, we're going to end it there. Gentlemen, thank you very much. An hour sure goes fast. Not a lot of time for questions. We did flip a coin before we began here this evening as far as the closing statement is concerned. Each of the candidates have 2 minutes to speak. And Walker Stapleton, you go first, and you have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much for having me tonight to El Pomar and Colorado Springs. It has been the honor of my life to serve as the treasurer of Colorado. I am running for governor for my 3 kids, Craig, Colette, and Olivia, and all of Colorado's kids to make sure we have abundant economic opportunity. But not just them. I'm working for a hardworking grandmother who has 2 jobs, who recently got $2,000 more in her pocket as a result of the federal tax cut. I'm working for a mother in western Colorado whose child has a specialty medicine that costs $10,000 every couple of months, and she has to drive her daughter long distances. I'm working for an individual in Pueblo who is paying more than he ever paid in his electric bills to heat his home at wintertime. And I am working on Coloradans every day who want to see more money in the classroom and less administrative bloat. None of this will be possible if Congressman Polis becomes the next governor, because his radical extreme agenda will not put Coloradans first. He wants to repeal the tax cut and take that $2,000 away from the grandmother. He wants to make sure that people pay more for their electricity and more to heat their homes year-round. He wants to cause rural doctors that my friend is seeing in western Colorado to be even in greater shortage because he will pay them less with his health care plan. This is not a Colorado that is compassionate. It is not a Colorado that puts Coloradans first. It is a Colorado that saddles us with massive government debt and empty promises, which makes it harder for us to live the Colorado way of life. It is a promise that threatens and jeopardizes all of the lives that we want to lead as Coloradans, where we want the government out of our lives so that we can recognize our hopes and dreams as Coloradans together. Thank you so much for having me tonight, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Polis, you have 2 minutes, sir.
You'll notice that often when Walker Stapleton talks, it's noun, verb, Jared Polis, noun, verb, Jared Polis. He talks more about what my plans are not than what his plans are. I'm here to tell you what my plans are. First of all, my plan is to save your family money on taxes. This state has over $1.6 billion of special interest tax giveaways. I would work with the legislature to cut those in half and reduce the income tax rate you pay and businesses pay by 3 to 5% so you can have more money left in your pocket by the end of the month rather than the high-priced Denver lobbyists. We're spending too much on health care in Colorado, and whether you're a Republican or Democrat, you should be upset and, in fact, fired up that you're paying 5 to 8 to 10 times as much for the exact same prescription drug that's available in Canada, or even at the VA, which is allowed to negotiate for prescription drug rates and often pays 30 to 50% less. I will do everything as governor not to spend more on health care, like Walker Stapleton talks about, but for us to spend less on health care, because we're already paying too darn much. And we have a plan to get it done. You can read about it at PolisForColorado.com. And yes, I'm excited to challenge Colorado to be one of the very first states to achieve 100% renewable energy. We have great wind and solar resources in our state. Wind energy saves people money today, and there's good green jobs right here in Colorado that can never be outsourced, and we can be truly independent right here in Colorado and even be more of an energy exporter than we are today. And yes, we need to make sure that every child gets a strong start. As the father of a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and as somebody who's been a superintendent of a charter school and who's chaired our State Board of Education, I've worked with Republicans and Democrats to make sure that we work together to make sure the resources reach the classroom, that we make sure that we have qualified educational professionals and pay them well enough and give them small enough class sizes to do their job well, and make sure that every kid not only has access to preschool and kindergarten, but access to affordable higher education through apprenticeships, vocational training, and yes, 4-year college for many. I'm Jared Polis, and I'd be honored to have your support in the upcoming election.
Jared Polis, thank you very much. Walker Stapleton, thank you. Also want to take this opportunity to thank the Gazette, Colorado Politics, of course, Joey Bunch, Elizabeth Watts, thank you for your role here tonight. Thanks to all of you who showed up, and of course our online viewers and on KOAA 5. Again, ballots go out next week. Be a part of the solution, everybody. You have until the 29th to register in order to get a paper ballot. And then, of course, you can register on the day of the election, November 6th. Please, turn out the vote. Let's make a difference. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rob Quirk. Until next time, we're always watching out for you.